Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to an all new season of the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship as presented by SimRacing International and hosted on the premier SimRacing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. That's right folks, we are back to kickstart season 19, and what better way to build up an appetite and which we'll gorge on in terms of the racing for this season than by bringing you a pre-season event. Our host circuit will win Japan for the mobility resort Motegi, previously known as the Twin Ring Motegi. But regardless of the name, this is a circuit that is lesser known but absolutely steeped in history. Born out of the desire from the Honda Motor Company to try and learn more about open wheel racing from the US of A, this circuit was built with one aim in particular: draw what is kart, or now modern day known as IndyCar, to the Japanese mainland in order to see drivers go racing around the oval and also the Grand Prix circuit and learn plenty so that way Japan can compete in open wheel racing. Wind forward the best part of 50 years, and now this is a circuit that is a staple of club level, national level and a degree of international level racing across Japan, where it be Super GT, GT All Challenge Asia, All 30 Super Formula and Japanese Formula 4. Is a circuit that is very unique in its layout and its core, a grand total of what is 14 corners and a spanning length of 2.98 miles. Sounds quite simple on paper, but what is unique about this circuit in particular is that the corners come in pairs typically, and connecting the pairs together long straights, presenting a circuit which is about stop-start in nature. For every heavy braking zone, there's a power zone on the exit, and it's a run to next corner sequence. And it's no wonder why this is one of those circuits that's going to be very hard on brakes and tyres, and also presents plenty of overtaking opportunities for those who are daring. A great place then to bring you this pre-season event, and we're bringing you all the racing action from the pre-season event as if it were live. Indeed, this broadcast is live on YouTube right now. Indeed, we say hello to you guys and girls in the YouTube chat on the SimRacing International YouTube channel, the one and only place you can catch all the racing action for the season. However, this broadcast itself is post-round, which means the race had occurred on Sunday the 28th of June 2026, and we're catching up with it as if it were live today, and that's how we'll present it on Tuesday the 30th of June. So therefore, we do not know who is going to be on pole for the purposes of our pre-season race, nor the outcome of the race itself. Practice has just occurred, and we've got a bit of an insight into exactly how the results look from practice, but we're going to learn as we go. And in the commentary booth, you're with myself. My name is Paul, Showdown Initiated, and I shall be your host and commentator for this season. It's great to be back in the commentary booth, and a huge thank you to the SimRacing International and the UKSimRacing admin team for trusting me to continue this series. Indeed, it has been an absolute joy to cover the UKSimRacing GT3 Championship for so many years now, and it's good to be back once again. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, as we make our way into the season, of course, no points up for grabs today. This is purely for bragging rights and a gauge of pace. And do bear in mind, all the class assignments you do see on this broadcast are provisional. They will be finalised going into round number 1, and they may be subject to some very minor changes going into round number 2 as the season goes on. So therefore, treat this broadcast as a means of enjoying some brilliant racing, and also treat it as a means of bringing yourself up to speed with the broadcast format. All the broadcasts for this season will be post-round, like the format you're seeing today, albeit most of them will be recorded rather than live on YouTube. But you won't be able to tell the difference other than the fact I won't be able to interact with the chat when I do the broadcast recorded. But beyond that, settle down and let's bring you up to speed with Season 19 as it's about to come about. And of course, to bring you up to speed with a season, let's firstly take a look at our calendar, shall we? 10 rounds of racing after our pre-season event, and it begins here today at the Motegi Grand Prix circuit. But well, it's just under a week's time, but a week's time for our drivers after they raced at Motegi, we head to what is none other than Australia for the Mount Panorama circuit, more known as Bathurst, if you will, in reference to the local city. And in the central table ends of Australia, that's where we'll open up with round number 1 on the 5th of July. It's a 1 hour race there. It's another 1 hour race at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in round number 2 in Belgium. So when exactly do we start to see our endurance race rounds arise? Because we will have a grand total of 3 of them back on the calendar once again. Well, it won't be round number 3 because we make our way all the way to the United States of America for the Virginia International Raceway's full course on the 19th of July. And after 3 1-hour races in anger for points, then we do have our first endurance race round. Rain will be on the cards at Road America in round number 4, and it will be in the picturesque countryside of Elkhart Lake of Wisconsin State that will see our drivers roar to the score of 90 minutes of racing in round number 4 on the 26th of July. Then to complete the first half of the season, we make our way back to European content for the Hockenheimring Baden-Württemberg Grand Prix circuit. And on the 2nd of August there, we complete the first half of the season with the risk of rain once again. And, well, a challenging circuit it is in the rain, I can tell you that, ladies and gentlemen. And then we go straight into the second half of the season. There's no breather for our drivers. And given we're going to France for the Circuit des 24 Hours du Mans, also known just as Le Mans, or the Circuit de la Sarthe, regardless of the name, we could not visit the infamous 24-hour race circuit on the 9th of August without having an endurance race there. And it'll be 90 minutes of racing for round number 6. And then round number 7, we will be making our way back to the US of A for another staple of international endurance racing. It'll be the Daytona International Speedway's road course on the 16th of August for round 7. But that'll be a 1-hour race. Now you notice we then draw a line underneath that because back from its debut in season 18, you all loved it, the fans all loved it as well, and indeed all the drivers loved it as much as everybody else. And what it does mean, we have got the Showdown format back once again on Sundays, and therefore all the opening cell rounds, they're worth standard points, and it will be 100 points for a win, and working down from there. But when we do go into rounds 8 through to 10, we go into the Showdown stage, and that's where we up the points for every position by 50%, so the win suddenly becomes worth 150 points, and it all begins at Watkins Glen for the Showdown stage on the 23rd of August. And indeed, we lock in what will be our drivers in terms of their car choice. More on that very shortly when we do go to Watkins Glen, and then they've got to compete over the final 3 rounds to seal the deal and crown champions. And what we'll see after Watkins Glen, it will be a 90-minute race with the risk of wet weather and mixed conditions at the Red Bull Ring in Austria. Indeed, a bit of an unconventional choice for an endurance race, but we promise you, we know what we're doing with regards to that one. In fact, it is a circuit which looks easy on paper, but is very challenging to be consistent at. That'll be in round number 9 on the 30th of August, and then we will bring the curtain down by making our way all the way back to the country we're starting things at the pre-season event today. We go back to Japan, but it will be to Mie prefecture of the country for the Suzuka International Racing Courses Grand Prix Layout on the 6th of September for round 10 to 10, and it'll be a 1-hour race to see our drives through to the conclusion. So our Showdown format is back, an absolutely brilliant calendar to go with it, mixed conditions as well, and the big change, of course, for this season with regards to the calendar is the fact we have moved one of endurance races into what is the Showdown stage as well. So it's not 3 60-minute races to complete the season, it's 2 60s and a 90, and it keeps things fresh, it keeps things on edge, and it means all our drivers will be absolutely going for it all the way from season start to season end. But if our calendar is all set with perfection, well, what about the rules? Of course, are there any rules and regulation changes this season? Well, the thing is, we're not going to go through every single rule. We're not going to read out what is the rule book, because otherwise we'll be here to the end of time. But what do you need to know? It's the rule changes you need to know. And there's only 2 notable changes this season. The biggest one is at the top of the screen. Car setups. This season, 1 car change is permitted. That's as per season 18. And it is only permitted between rounds 1 through to 7. The car change can no longer be made in what will be the Showdown stage. So when our drivers complete round number 7, whatever car they complete round 7 in, they are locked into it for the remainder of the season. season. If they do decide to change the car midway through rounds 1 through to 7, they will be subject to a 30-point penalty. This is a brand new decision for all of our race series at SimRacing International, because car changes, they can sometimes give a little bit of an advantage. You pick the car choice at the right time, so we're just reeling in that advantage by making sure our drivers know that if they're going to make a change, it's a gamble that they need to make sure it's worth taking, and they'll lose 30 points. That is 30% of a win. It is a sizable penalty, and well, that could just force some drivers to really consider their car choices. Of course, the cars you see drivers in today for this pre-season event, they are not locked into those. This is a pre-season test event where they're out there to have some fun, and also some drivers will be looking to confirm what their car choice is for the season, and others will be experimenting as a result of this. So therefore, do not read into the car choices. Whatever car they turn up with on the grid for round number 1 or the first official round they compete in, that is their initial car selection, and they have the ability to change it once before the end of round number 7, but after that they are locked in for the showdown stage. The other rule change, it's a very minor one. Instant point limits. We have seen the drive-through penalty limit reduced from 18 to 16, and this is part of a standardisation package for our rules and regulations here at SimRacing International for all of our series, and therefore there's just 2 less instant points before you get to that drive-through penalty, but race disqualification remains very firmly at 26 instant points, and hopefully we don't see disqualifications over the course of this season. But of course, those are the rules. We're not going to go any further into those. What are our drivers competing for, I hear you ask? Well, they'll be competing for the classic, what is SimRacing International, much coveted acrylic trophies. Now we have 35 personalised driver trophies to be won this season, and approximately the breakdown is as follows. We have 3 driver classes. So we do have the return of Pro, Inter and Club, and there will be 7 trophies up for grabs for the top 7 drivers in each of those championships. So that makes 21 trophies. So what about the other 14 for those of you quick on the mathematical voice calculator? Well, the other 14 will go to our top 7 teams on the Teams Championship, because back once again is the 2-driver team format for the Teams Championship. It worked incredibly well in Season 18. We're bringing it back once again, and therefore there will be the other 14 trophies that go to our top 7 teams. And so it'll be exciting. Indeed, it'll be a trophy worth fighting for every step of the way, and we look forward to seeing who will be taking those trophies home come the end of the season. And good luck to all the drivers competing for this season, because we definitely look forward to it, and we'll be up to speed with some regular faces and some new faces as well when we do cut to the qualifying session in short order. But just before we do come to the qualifying session that is underway currently, well, let's talk a little bit about our host circuit for this pre-season event. It's the Mobility Resort Motegi, the Grand Prix circuit of which is playing host and located near the town of Motegi in the Tochigi Prefecture of Japan. 2.98 miles in length or 4.8 kilometers, depending on your preference of units. What will never change is the number of quarters, 14 of them in total, and a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely brilliant track maps contained within it. Now, this is a 2-dimensional track map, of course. We have no 3D elevation on this track map, and it pretty much aligns with the elevation changes you will see here. Very little elevation change, the most notable one being a very gradual gradient change from the run out of turn number 10 in towards turn number 11, when the circuit goes downhill and then rises up through turns 11 through to turn 1. Beyond that, no more than approximately around about 10 metres of elevation change over the entirety of the lap, and it means our drivers, this is all on the flat, and it's a very tricky circuit when it comes to nailing corners, because there's very little grip out on the tarmac. A lot of Japanese circuits do struggle for grip given the humidity levels that are typically seen during race seasons, and it makes it a very fun circuit to learn. But as the drivers roar the way down the start finish straight and in towards turns 1 and 2, they'll find out to clear the double apex right-hander, which is approximately a hairpin, before they make the way onto the next long stretch in towards turns 3 and 4. Now, they'll find it's a V-shaped hairpin at turns 3 and 4, where essentially the corner cuts off asymmetrically with a very tight opening apex to turn 3, giving way to a gentler exit at turn number 4. It's all about balancing the throttle pedal. Next up towards turn number 5, another loop back hairpin, as the drivers will complete the first sector lap and make their way under the oval, which was recently shut, and it will no longer be open for the world of real motorsport anymore. A sad day to see the twin ring part of the Mobility Resort Motegi being shut down and being turned into car park. And once the drivers make their way under the oval, they'll go in towards the medium speed sweeper section of turns 6, 7 and 8, where the average apex speed will decline rapidly as they go through the uphill chicane of turns 7 and 8, and then in towards the hairpin of turn number 9. Out of what is the third hairpin of the circuit, they'll then make their way in towards turn number 10, the fourth for the hairpins, before they make their way down the Eastern Straight, used typically for national level racing, and then they'll roar the way into the sharp 90-degree right-hander at turn number 11, go underneath the oval for the second time, and through the kinks of 12 and 13 to set up the final quarter of turn number 14, and they'll charge the way over the crest and to the finish line, or to go on to another lap. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's make our way back to circuit side and see how our drivers get it on in the qualifying session. And as the drivers make the one around, well, who's looking quick and who, meanwhile, is looking to need to put a little bit more work? Well, the quickest driver out there right now is none other than Harvey Wheeler. Back once again is the youngster, and will back in the pro class. And it's great to see him back once again. And bearing in mind, of course, he was your Season 18 Pro Drivers Champion in an incredibly tight fight between himself and Thomas Noakes that went down to the wire at Donington Park in the Donington Decider, and in the end Harvey Wheeler came out on top by a slender margin when it was looking to be really on edge. And Harvey Wheeler will be the favourite for this season, of course, to try and defend his crown. However, there are plenty of fresh faces who'll be looking to try and take him on, no doubt about it. One of which, of course, a newcomer to the grid of his first time in the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship. It is none other than the 142 Porsche driver, at least he's turned up today, and a lovely livery on that car, it must be said, of Daniel Kovac. And we're very happy to see him join in the grid, and as he makes his way around, we wish him the best luck on his debut. And there are quite a few fresh faces. We'll try and catch as many of them as we can, but of course if we do miss them, we do apologise in advance. There are 60 drivers who are signed up for this season. Not all of them are here today. We have a grand total of approximately 22 to 25. Some have just turned up for the practice session, so others decided to go all in for the qualifying and the race. But again, this was a completely optional race day. It was not so any points were on the line. But as Kovac makes his way on through, well, meanwhile, we do look to what is Cole Roy back once again in the pro class, and the Scotsman, after what's a very frustrating Season 18, you could say an anonymous Season 18, and the fact he really wasn't up there in the headlines until it was going wrong. Well, the 127 driver back in his formidable Ferrari, and very happy to see him back once again, racing as part of the Axis Sim Sport with Sim coach outfit, and that iconic livery back on the car. And keep your eyes out for the 127 driver. He'll be looking for redemption. Currently third, well, it is the teammate there of Kovac, and that is none other than Eric Gebhard, the Hungarian driver, and he's looking quite quick out there right now on a 49.75, but he is 8 tenths off the overall pole time set by Harvey Wheeler. Well, that's just a taste of some of your pro drivers there, and we do welcome Eric to the grid. He's a newcomer alongside his teammate, hasn't raced in this series before, and we look forward to seeing what they can do to mix up with some new blood versus some older blood. And speaking of some old blood on the grid, well, indeed, he's been an established member of what's the SimRacing International GT3 series on Thursdays, and making his way onto the grid, I do believe, for Sundays for the first time this season, unless I'm mistaken, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, he's normally on Thursdays, and I do sometimes get the drivers mixed up, to be fair. Well, he's currently in the Interclass. It's Wesley Van Rens, a very friendly driver off the circuit. Indeed, one of the fairest drivers you will ever see on the circuit. And he brings a BMW M4 Evo to this pre-season event, as he also brings himself a bit wide there coming out of turn 9, but he's currently the fastest of what is your into drivers, the middle tier. And just keep in mind, if you're looking for the pros on the times down the left hand side of your screen or at the bottom of the qualifying times, pros are indicated by a red stripe against their name. The inters are indicated by a green stripe, which is Wesley Van Rens. As he makes his way on down right now, well, he is the best part of none other than almost a tenth faster than Robin Aston back once again. And well, good to see him here in the 3-2-5 as he rolls way through the corners. And well, right now, Robin definitely trying to keep his head to the ground as he rolls on through the bends. But the Porsche very quick through the corners, not as quick on the straights typically, and that might be the change he's going to contest, as we know how strong he can be, and he just needs to hit a bit of momentum early on, and he may be a contender for the Inter Championship this season, or one of the more favoured contenders, shall we say. Hendrik Zilka returns once again, and it's good to see him back here for Old Dudes and Cars. And, well, the Old Dudes and Cars outfit running more teams once again this season. And Hendrik Zilka, a core part of the outfit. And remember, of course, he made his debut all the way back, if my memory serves me correctly, in what was Season 15. So the best part of almost 2 years ago now. And, well, he's back once again. It's great to see the 212 driver out there. And I do remember on his debut chasing a podium in the time when we did have, I believe we were still at the time running the revised class format. We've gone from what was gold, silver and bronze. In fact, no, I think we were still in the era of what was platinum, gold, silver and bronze. He made his debut in the silver class, almost took a podium. He was one place away in the end, and it was a small mistake. And then in the next round he competed in, he joined midway through the season. He took his first podium, and it was an absolutely brilliant performance on his debut season. But as he makes his way onwards, well, right now, that debut a long time away, and hopefully this season we get to see him regularly back up there on the podium, because we know he's got the potential. We know he can take race wins, but it's normally one of those situations whereby when those podiums come, they come very rapidly. But when they don't come, it's a drought for a long time. But as he heads on through, we also do welcome to the grid, new for this season in the Interclass, at least for now, Dean Collins in his McLaren 720S Evo. And, well, right now make his way through a few drivers there, pulling over to the side. Oh, goodness me, what's going on between him and the SimCast Race UK BMW there? Well, I think they're just trying to position themselves. I think there are some cars coming through, including Wesley Van Rens. I don't think there was any malice meant. I was going to say he's either pulling aside for somebody coming through, alternatively, presumably he's going to have a conversation with the Simcast racing car, and I'm going to take a guess it was the former rather than the latter. But as he makes one round, oh, that's very sideways. They're both sideways. Well, surely they didn't script that, and that was Jordan Maymar following off the road, and well, Jordan in the end decides to reverse out as Motegi Collins decides to tow to the pit lane. So two different outcomes, but both drivers there in synchronicity. You cannot predict that, to be fair. My goodness, I did not expect that, ladies and gentlemen, and I can promise you I've not looked at this replay file before this broadcast today, so my reaction is absolutely genuine when I'm seeing things unfold in front of my very eyes. But as Maymar brings himself back together, well, we do look now to the club class for a little bit, and Jordan Maymar, of course, a driver who has a huge amount of pace and potential in club, and well, previous seasons he's shown it with multiple wins, but the problem has been for Jordan Maymar as he shakes himself to side to side. I presume he knows he's on camera right now, although he can't, of course, given the timing, but understandably there, we're going to assume he does, and the 330 driver make his way on through turns 3 and 4 right now, and if he has one consistent season, there is no reason why he cannot become the club champion. And keep in mind, of course, that last season it was Martin Kenyon who took the crown, and we are expecting Kenyon to be back on the grid for this season, although is he here today? I don't think so. It'll be interesting to see when Martin Kenyon returns in club, or whether he gets moved up to Inter, because Martin Kenyon beat this man to the title, as he also did beat Grant Miller, his main two rivals for it. And well, the key point being that for Martin, he became the first ever driver in the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship history to take a championship title with over 1,000 points. It's never been done before. Of course, we have changed our points formats over the years, so therefore we have to adjust for inflation, but he is the first driver to take a crown with over 1,000 points, and what an achievement it was, and we look forward to seeing him back. But in terms of speaking about drivers who are back, we do have Hayden Young returning, and if you're wondering about your defending Inter champion, well, he cannot defend his crown because he has been moved up to pro. There he is at the end of the pit lane in his own Ferrari 296, but it's good to see Hayden back once again. A very emotional end to the season when he had to really come back in the late stages and was able to steal the title away from Mikey Stewart in the season finale after a disastrous round for Stewart opened up the door at Donington, and it was a brilliant run of 2 wins and a second place in the showdown rounds that enabled Hayden Young to make that steal. But where are my manners? I've leapt all the way out of the club class, or not, and we come back to the club class, and new to the grid for this season is Jim Fox, as he makes his way on around right now in the number 380, and well, good to see him out there as he rolls his way through the corners. And as he does so, well, we look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do. Currently the second fastest of the club drivers who put qualifying time in, and well, I do believe he's quite a potent driver when it comes to pace, and we look forward to seeing what his plan is going to be. Also, another newcomer to our grid for this season is none other than Steve G. I do believe that's how you say his name. I'm sure he'll correct me if not. And of course, if any of our drivers are listening to this broadcast or watching, and if I have completely butchered your name, which I have a habit of doing so, that's one of my Walshisms, like Murray Walker had his great Murray, although mine are nowhere near as great as the late, great Murray Walker. Well, our drivers are more than welcome to get in touch with me, and indeed anything that they can suggest or recommend, we're always happy to take on board here at SimRacing International for the broadcast, because at the end of the day, we put these broadcasts on for the drivers and for you guys and girls, the viewers. And indeed, we know that family and friends, we tune in as much as the drivers themselves to these broadcasts. As we do see G make his way on through, he's been absolutely enthusiastic about getting on the grid, and what a car he's picked out there. He's the sole Corvette Z06 GT3R, based on the C8 Stingray platform, but this car is a bit of a sleeping giant in GT3, both in the real world of motorsports and on iRacing. It has a very unique set of characteristics, and it's one of those drivers, one of those cars, I should say, which for its drivers, if you put in the time and the patience and you learn the car, it has a lot of pace at its potential. And the biggest part of this car, torque. In the fact this car does have a lot of engine power, no matter what gear you're in, at what speed, and therefore if you master the art of deploying its torque curve, you can really get a lot out of those corner exits, and you can save quite a bit of fuel and tyre life as a result, and that's one of the secrets that needs to be unlocked in this car, from what I understand from speaking to some drivers in the past. We all do have new to the grid, none other than Tobias Hackinson, and well, he's currently parked up in the pit lane. We can't quite get a view of his car parked up at that angle, but there it is, and well, he's with his teammate there, and well, the McLaren driver, and joined by Harry Tuominen, who has parked up behind him, and Tuominen is currently the fastest of your club drivers out there, with 7 minutes to go and decide not to go back out. This qualifying session, of course, 30 minutes in duration, and we're covering the best part of the final with 15 to 20 minutes. Of course, we have a little bit less time to cover when we do the main broadcast of the season, so we bring you up to championship standings and everything in between. But normally we will try and catch the final 15 minutes of qualifying. But how could I not welcome back to the grid after a couple of seasons away none other than Simcast Racing UK's Matthew Hunter? And well, he promised me when he did let me know that he was returning, of course, part of the absolutely brilliant Simcast Racing podcast, or Simcast podcast, we should say. which of course forms part of Radio Le Mans on a regular basis, including as part of the 24 Hours of Le Mans radio show. Well, Hunter makes his way on down right now, and indeed an absolutely brilliant podcast to listen to. Do listen to the Simcast podcast if you love your podcast. They have a whole variety of guests come on from real-life motorsport and in the sim racing space as well, and indeed they do a fantastic job week in, week out at Simcast. Matt Hunter finding some time to return. He's a busy man, but it's so good to see him back here, bringing the Aston Martin V8 Vantage with twin-turbo Mercedes V8 under the front of the hood, and as he makes way around, improves there to a 52.002. He's finding a bit more time, but he's still got more time to find there if he wants to try and get himself towards the front of club. But indeed, time is running out. But as we do look to the YouTube chat, we do say hello to a few of you there in YouTube, including none other than Nathan Anstis, or Anstis96 as he's known, and a huge shout out to Nathan Anstis, of course, one of the two members of our administration team. Well, both of them on the grid for this pre-season event, and you'll see them both on the grid throughout this season, the other one being none other than Jack Barker, who is currently parked up in the pit lane, I do believe. And in fact, Jack decided not to go out there unless I'm mistaken, although if not, he's just going to start from the back of the grid. But they do a brilliant job week in, week out, and well, they're also the individuals who we recommend you point the finger at when things don't go right. Okay, perhaps don't do that, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, as drivers, we can entirely get it. The fact when things go right, you feel absolutely fantastic. When things go wrong, the emotions run high, but they're there to try and make sure everything runs as smoothly as possible. And Nathan back for what is now, I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Nathan, what would be his 8th season of administrating the series, and I believe for Jack Barker now coming back for what is his 2nd full season administrating it. It's good to have Jack on board supporting Nathan, and good to see both of them there and also going racing. But as we also do say hello to Mark Kent94 there in the YouTube chat. Mark, of course, part of the Full Tilt Virtual Motorsport family that you'll see on the grid in our GTE Championship, and hopefully we get to see it in the GT3 races as well. And Mark, an absolute star, as indeed are all the FTVM team, and indeed a team that had a very emotional end to season 2 of the GT Championship, not just seeing Dwayne Hoffman take what was the club championship title, but also seeing the team bring home the team's championship title, the real underdogs of the season, and use data and strategy in order to spring the biggest surprise and perhaps the biggest upset that I've ever seen in my sim racing commentary career, or let alone motorsport commentary career. And I've seen a few things in my time, ladies and gentlemen, including the first change at Mallory Park many a year ago. And well, we won't go into that story today because we're here to talk about the UK SimRacing GT3 Championship. But as we also say hello to SR20 Mikey, who says, shame I can't try to take the title for Hayden this season, with us both being moved up into pro. And indeed, Mikey Stewart back in the grid, but he'll be in the pro class like he mentions there, although it will be great to see them both out there and see them establish a foothold in the pro class. But we have got a lot of very big names that joined in the pro class this season, as well as in other classes, and I have got a list of names here. I won't go through them all now because I don't think it's fair to essentially spoil the party, and also not to have the focus on the drivers here. But one name we will point out and declare, ladies and gentlemen, Philip Hammer. I've just taken a breath there in case if you were a little bit shocked about that. If you don't know who Philip Hammer is, he is previously an iRacing driver who I think at one point did manage to break 10,000 iRating. Bit of a Porsche Cup specialist, to be fair, back in the generation of the Porsche 992 Cup car and the Porsche 992.1 Cup car. I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but indeed, I think he hasn't been as big of a fan of the 992.2 in recent history, much like many of the major forces in Porsche Cup racing. And of course, the big component of that being what is the very bouncy suspension, should we say, that is being worked on by the iRacing team, but it's going to take a significant amount of time because it does require wholesale changes to the physics geometry of the car. They can't just simply patch out what's happened to the car. But essentially, we do have Philip Hammer making his debut in this championship for this season. Now, he's not here today, and he's no stranger if you've been a long-time viewer of UK SimRacing series, because you will remember that he took multiple crowns in battling with several drivers, including drivers from Olympus Esports, whose names do escape me, but indeed he was a multi-time champion of the UK SimRacing Porsche Cup all those years ago, and it's going to be absolutely incredible to see him return in the Porsche Cup legend. And indeed, when Hammer gets going, there is a reason why it's called Hammer Time. It's not because of Lewis Hamilton in the sim racing space, it is because of Philip Hammer. But we're coming towards the crunch point now of this qualifying session, and one thing we have not done is essentially brought you an on-board lap on our drivers, and with just over a minute to go, well, very shortly we will do so. But who exactly are we going to get on board with, I hear you ask? Well, as we do see Gebhard make his way through turns 3 and 4, he's just started a lap. Well, he's midway through a lap, we should say, as I believe that is a Porsche that's had a bit of a trip wayward. Couldn't quite see who that was. I think that might be Steve Hobbs, in fact, as he does return there. when he gets himself back on the road. Good Steve back again, although a very different colour livery and indeed a different team this season. Previously the part of the Axis Simsport outfit, but for this season, Racer's part of what is none other than the WRX Esports team. I think it's WRX Esports. I'm trying to figure it out from the livery there. Of course, a whole new set of teams. I've got to figure them out as we go, ladies and gentlemen. And as he makes one around, good to see Steve back out there. He will be in the Pro class. Very consistent driver, not the fastest, but if you want Mr. Consistent, you can look for Steve Hobbs. But as Sight Anti makes his way into the pit lane there, does not decide to do one more lap. So he's decided he's done and dusted with qualifying. When he comes to Wesley Van Rens, making his way on through the corner. On turn number 11 and underneath the bridge. And as he does so, the BMW M4, a bit of a dark horse car. And well, as we do get ready to see him make his way out the final corner, let's get an on-board lap with the man in the dark horse as he roars his way down towards turn number 1. So for his final qualifying lap, he heads up towards the opening corner. Looking to his left-hand side for his brake marker. It's that 50-metre board you brake before, going all the way down the gearbox to second gear. V-shape between the apexes, and in doing so, you get a good exit, but a lot of power oversteer there for Wesley Van Rens as he now makes his way up towards turn number 3, and that's the problem. The low grip level of the surface means you've got to be very delicate on the throttle. Breaks his way 100 metres of quarter apex into turn number 3 as the checkered flag comes out on qualifying and making his way through the double left. And you can see here a much gentler apex exit at turn number 4, but actually makes the quarter harder because you have to balance the throttle pedal very delicately, about 75%. Now over to the left-hand side to break his way in towards turn number 5, coming all the way down. Go for a late apex as late as you dare, but Van Rens takes a very early apex there to pull the car through the corner on the curb. And as he goes flat out through turn number 6, we'll keep the car all the way over to the right-hand side in order to open up turn 7. Onto the brakes here at the start of the entry curve and dropping down all the way to third gear. Make his way from left into right. Make sure you take plenty of curb, and as soon as you feel the front right tyre pull onto the curb, get the throttle down immediately and you open up the corner. Onto the brakes now in towards turn number 9, coming all the way down the gearbox to second gear. It takes a midpoint apex there. Good line from Van Rens. Very tricky corner, turn number 9. It's one of those corners whereby you have to balance your foot on the brake pedal so carefully as he now brakes his way from 120 metres away in towards turn number 10. Second gear there, making sure not to get too much wheel spin, and the BMW that's proven to be quite a handful so far. As he makes his way down the hill on the eastern straight, he gets ready now for turn number 11. Looking to his left-hand side in preparation, he'll be looking for the 100-metre board, and as he sees it, onto the brakes he'll go just before it at about 110 metres, going all the way down to second gear. Point the car towards the apex and then clatter off the curb. Now over to the right to open up turn number 12, and now will he come into the pit lane? He does in fact come into the pits. He does not complete the lap, and he leaves us guessing what turns 30 to 14 look like from on board, but it will be that quick switch back from left into right with a slight off camber run coming out of turn number 14. It could always catch a driver out and force them to understeer a little bit wide. But Steve Hobbs calls on down. Well, pole position for this pre-season event has gone to Harvey Wheeler overall and in pro by 3 tenths in over Hayden Young, the inter-champion and now part of the pro class. Carl Roy was only a tenth behind at the end and will be joined on that second row by Eric Gebhard. Then we do see started 6th overall, but on pole for the interclass, it will be Hendrik Zielke, and now Casper Brotner between himself and Wesley Van Rens, the second place starter we were riding on board with. Somebody's blown an engine in the pit lane, not quite sure who. And well, we'll see Sight Anti and Robin Aston complete the top 10, all 4 of those drivers being inter drivers. And then you have to go all the way to 16th place to find Harry Tuominen, who will be your club pole sitter today, just ahead of Jim Fox, who managed to close the gap down to 2.5 tenths. And then we will see Jordan Maymart and Matthew Hunter complete the top 4 of the club class. All of our club drivers together, albeit we did not get any qualifying times come in from Jack Barkin or Daniel Pays or James Conley. So 25 drivers here, 22 are set times, but it could always be, of course, we might see some last to first changes being delivered by those who did not set times together. We'll have to wait and see. But as we do give the qualifying session a bit of a breather, we now do have our 5-minute period, our warm-up period, of which our drivers are going to be taking a bit of a moment. And well, I see there Dean VRS saying it's WRTE Pool, worst racing team ever. Well, I love that name for the team, to be fair. And thank you for confirming that, Dean. I'll make a mental note of it and try not to get it wrong. And indeed, well, I was going to say WRT at first, but now I thought I'd have lawyers coming over for the less infamous WRT team, the ones from GT World Challenge, of course, fielding Valentino Rossi as part of their star group. And well, Valentino Rossi, of course, going from 2 wheels to 4 wheels and doing an incredible job on his silver FA licence. But we do have the worst racing team ever out there, which is absolutely brilliant to see. And thank you, Dean. It's good to have you tuning in, and well, good to see you and the team all out here for this season. We also do say hello there to none other than, I do believe, let me try and get this username absolutely right, and that is Aspendozia2985. It says Hammer Time Counter. Indeed, I suspect we are going to hear me say Hammer Time a few times, and if so, you're welcome to build up a counter, although I wouldn't recommend recommend it as a drinking game, of course, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, I do know that some individuals in the past have actually played drinking games off of some phrases that I've said every so often. Well, I don't recommend it, of course. But as our drivers make the way around in the warm-up session, and this 5-minute warm-up period serves multiple purposes. It, of course, gives our drivers a bit of cool-down time. For some of them, they choose not to cool down. They choose to go back out there. It also means our drivers have an opportunity now to take the qualifying setup off the car. And yes, you're probably sat there thinking right now, do they still forget to do that before they go to the grid in this 5-minute warm-up period? We've had drivers do it on both Thursdays and Sundays. They forget to put the race setup on the car. Particularly the fuel load has been the most common thing that's caught them out. But hopefully they won't get caught out this season. We never want to see that happen. And, well, we also do have what is the opportunity for our drivers to take a bit of a comfort break. And also, it means that you guys and girls tuning in, if you so desire, if you're feeling as though you need to go to the bathroom, alternatively, you want to get top up of your liquid refreshment, whether it be a cup of tea, liquid beverage, or fizzy drink, alternatively, alcoholic, well, you're more than welcome to go get top up. And on top of that as well, you can also, if you're feeling a bit peckish, go put yourself a snack together and get ready to go. And of course, there's nothing quite like cinematic entertainment when it comes to sim racing drivers, without some snacks to go with it. Indeed, with modern movies not being quite the movies that we all remember, although there's been some good cinema releases, sometimes it's always good to wait for a release here at SimRacing International, a bit of a blockbuster perhaps today. And Aspen Dozy is saying Aspen is fine, and no worries Aspen, I'll refer to you that way going forward. Thank you for confirming, as well everyone ready to go. And, well, Mark Kent there called it out what is one of my catchphrases with regards to goodness me, with regards to a related drinking game. Well, goodness me, Mark, you're an enabler. But as they make the way on down here right now, well, we do see the GTRR machine there of Steve G just making his way casually on around. Lovely livery on that car, to be fair. Very unique livery, a whole hodgepodge of colours. But it all actually does work together and getting ready to unleash the beast of that Corvette. And with that 5.5 litre V8, naturally aspirated, one of two American machines that can be on a GT3 grid. The other one being the V8 5-litre Coyote engine of Casper Brotner of Old Duty Cars Amnesia. I do believe 5.2 litres technically at the boards, but it is 5 litres in the road car. And for those who are not used to what a GT3 is, well, the best way to think of a GT3 is it's a road car that's been turned into a race car with approximately 20% road car and 80% race car, where it's all based on a homologated road car. So you can, if you do have the money available, for example, to go to your local Ford dealer in the world and ask them for what would be a 7th generation Ford Mustang, which is what this car is based on. Indeed, looking at the front section of the car is very familiar, the rear section as well, particularly more familiar to the Dark Horse variant of the car, which is seen as the sports package, the equivalent of an M car from BMW, alternatively what could be considered to be a Porsche 911 GT3R that you could buy on the road. But then, of course, all the interior has been completely stripped out. Also, you've had lightening of all the components as much as humanly possible. Carbon ceramic brakes have been fitted and have been uprated for racing spec. You know, it's been done to be turned into a fully fledged race car. And these cars without balance performance normally outputting anywhere between 600 to 800 brake horsepower. But then restrictor plates are fitted. On top of that, balance performance is done. And they all average out at around about 500 to 550 brake horsepower in order to keep them all competitive. Also, each car has its own unique spec weight, whereby the Ford Mustang is one of the heavier cars out there, although I don't have the numbers of the weight available to me, but that's all part of the balance performance. A heavier car, of course, means greater tyre wear, and also does mean it's harder to stop compared to a lighter car. But normally the lighter cars out there, they also have some downsides, particularly when it's engine power, perhaps. Steve Hobbs in the Porsche 911, or the 9 and 2 generation car, a very quick handling car, and a car that is grinding pace on straights as well in more recent balance performance updates. And at one time in the real world of motorsport, actually the fastest GT3 car in GT World Challenge Europe, indeed going down the Circuit Paul Ricard back straight, which of course we are expecting to arrive in iRacing later this year based on the way it's been teased to us through development updates. Well, the Porsche did set the record about 6 or 7 years ago down that straight for Team GPX, if I remember correctly. But as we do see Steve Hobbs, well, he won't be setting records in the short run up towards turn number 10, but we tried to set hearts on fire for worst racing team ever's number 44 machine, as he now gets himself, as all of our drivers do, ready to go onto the grid because warm-up is complete and it's time to make our way then into this pre-season race. But how will they all line up? How will they all finish? Let's find out. And as all drivers make the way onto the grid, that's how they'll all line up for one and only race here at Mobility Resort Motegi. And as we can see, taking pole position, pro and overall, it is Harvey Wheeler for Verso Rapid. He'll be joined on the front row of the grid with the defending champion by Heighten Young, the debutant in the pro class, but a regular on the grid and the past inter-champion. But he won't be able to defend that crown, instead he's got to push forward. And meanwhile, looking to try and defend a little bit of pride, Kyle Roy looking to show that he hasn't lost his pace as he looks to go hunting today from third place. Behind the Axis Sim Sport Sim Coach drive, it will be debutant for DRX Esport of Eric Gebhard, and the Hungarian driver there was the best part of 1.6 tenths off of Roy, but in turn was only a 100th quicker than his teammate of Daniel Kovac. Then we do see from the fellow Hungarian driver, it is the Swiss who takes pole position in none other than what will be the interclass, and that is going to be Hendrik Zilka for Old Duty Cars Midlife Crisis. Well, if that's the sign of a midlife crisis taking pole in class, I don't know what normal is. And meanwhile, his teammate will not either. Casperano, who hasn't forgotten a trick, as he starts in 7th place there for Old Duty Cars Amnesia. Wednesday round Rennes, Revolution 3 races starts in 8th place, second of your inter-drivers, the Dutchman. Just there, a slight anti for Team UKSimRacing Stewart, dedicated, of course, their team this season to Jackie Stewart. And I do believe they also have a Jensen Button team for this season, unless I'm mistaken. Indeed, commemorating both an older driver in British fame for motorsport and also one of the more modern drivers who's definitely getting on now, pushing the best part of 50, unless I'm mistaken. But still, slight anti, I don't think he's pushing the best part of 50, the Welshman, as he starts in 9th place, with Robin Astor joining for company on that 5th row of the grid in 10th for 5M Racing. Outside the top 10, 11th place, it's going to be Steve Hobbs, the worst racing team ever, and he'll be in the company of none other than Joshua Pratt, who starts 12th. And then we do have Dean Collins, the worst racing team ever, just directly behind his teammate. He starts 13th, ahead of Max Wheeler for Verso Fast. We then do see from Max Wheeler, who brings his Audi R8 Evo 2 to the party once again. We couldn't be without it. The Briton will be followed up by Nathan Instis for Team UKSimRacing Hill, dedicated to Damon Hill, of course, the 1996 Formula 1 World Champion, in his battle with Jacques Villeneuve. We'll then see him joined on the 8th row by Harry Tuominen, the Hexagon slow driver, looking anything but slow, taking club pole position, the Finn, and he will be followed up on row number 9 by the company of Jim Fox for the privateer outfit, and Simcast for Altitude from Esports is Jordan Maymar. We then do have Simcast racing teams at Matt Hunter starting in 19th place on his return to the grid ahead of Tobias Hackinson, and the Hexagon slow drive in 20th place will be followed up by none other than what will be Ben Knowles, who starts in 21st of 5M Racing ahead of Steve G for GTR, and we can then see Jack Barker for Made for Racing, no qualifying time set. He starts on the back of the grid. You can see him there getting ready to get underway. Daniel Pace does not join the grid for Old Duty Cars Amnesia, perhaps just here to practice and get some qualifying time in today, and James Connolly will start 25th for Team UKSimRacing Hill at the very back of the grid. But the field makes its way away on this short formation lap, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, not always a full formation lap here on iRacing, and as our drivers make their way through behind the pace car, well, it's not too long to go before it will be to Harvey Wheeler to take us to the green for this pre-season race. 60 minutes, all drivers out there looking to have fun and earn some bragging rights. As Harvey Wheeler makes his way out to the final quarter, it's over to him to take us to the green. And it's lights and away we go for this pre-season event as Harvey Wheeler takes the field down towards turn number 1 as they do at full speed. Well, Wheeler leads, but look at this, Hayden Young battling already with Kyle Roy. Young for Send It Racing, trying to go all the way around the outside, the fend off Roy to give himself the inside of the next 2 quarters. But as all the field comes on through, everyone's safely through the opening quarter, although one driver going very wide there. That was a McLaren of Tobias Hackinson, taking a bit of a long distance tip. But meanwhile, as they make their way into the braking zone now for turn number 3, 3 wide there to break it. Sight anti goes to win, squeeze, but there's contact between himself and Hendrik Zilka. Zilka turns sideways, and everyone takes the base of action immediately. Well done to everyone for doing so. That's going to be a very adventurous look up the inside of Matthew Hunter. He makes it work, and Hendrik Zilka right now has gone from front to back as he now gets himself back up to speed. But meanwhile, the attacks are not over as Kyle Roy and Hayden Young, well, right now that's glued side by side here, and they do know they've got the best part of 60 minutes in this race, right? It's not over in just what is a singular lap. Well, they don't mind that at the moment as they battle side by side, coming in towards the exit sequence. So right now, Kyle Roy on the inside, and Roy really going all in for this. It will give him the inside of turn number 9 if he completes this move. Meanwhile, Daniel Kovac stays behind, and then Eric Gebhard, his teammate, watching it as well. But how do they get involved? Well, there's Kovac looking up the inside as Young goes very deep here through turn number 9 and gets a lot of power over still on cold tyres. Flash of the headlights there for Gebhard, but here comes Casper Brockner and simply says, out of the way if you please. And well, he'll be absolutely going for that, no doubt about it. Throws himself up the inside immediately, and a lovely move there from what is Casper Brockner seizing on the situation. Jim Fox, meanwhile, right now with Jordan Maymar right behind. Well, Fox definitely looking quick, but the problem is he's got to now deal with is a situation whereby he's feeling a little bit of pressure, and as they make their way onwards here, Fox right now definitely 9. It's going to be a big field behind him, whether it be on the official race day or here today, and well, feeling that it's all getting closer and closer. But as they make their way down to that braking zone, well, Fox here keeping Jordan Maymar at bay for now, but there's still more to come. But after one lap of racing, Harvey Wheeler leads and, well, carried on from where he left off in the previous season. And, well, showing no signs of being afraid to lead this race. As meanwhile behind, that will be none other and I do believe it's Carl Roy and Daniel Kovac. And shortly our camera will catch up with them, ladies and gentlemen. And there it goes. Carl Roy ahead of Daniel Kovac as they make their way in towards the next sequence of corners. As they roll them down, Kovac, then Young, followed by Brotner. Then it'll be Gebhard followed behind. But Hayden Young looking up the inside here, trying to come back versus the Hungarian driver. The Briton goes all in, living up to his team name of Send It Racing. And we send it on the inside. Kovac in the end simply holds his line and says, okay, I'm not going to fight it too hard right now because we've got a whole host of racing to come. As we bring our clock up in the centre of the screen there. Meanwhile, Casper Brotner and Eric Gebhard still side by side, and this is happening at the front of the field. Don't worry, we haven't forgotten about the other drivers, and we'll try and come to them very shortly. But as they make their way out of turn number 5, we'll sign Anti now says, can I play? We'll side. The thing about the UKSimRacing Stewart driver is, as he goes side by side here with Casper Brotner, if he starts to battle with you, Sight Anti will not stop. And that's the thing you've got to be careful with the Mercedes AMG Evo driver, is the fact that if you do not make a definitive block, like we just saw there from Casper Brotner, and when we're talking about blocks here, we're not talking about illegal moves, although there are sometimes called illegal moves in motorsport known as a block pass, more on that later. Well, Sight Anti right now will keep on pushing until you pretty much put him in his place and say, no, you are not coming through. But meanwhile, speaking of a driver who is coming through very gradually, Max Wheeler, he's come all the way up through the field into 11th place, albeit aided a bit by the kerfuffle, if you will, some would say, that happened at turn number 3 at the start of the race. But the Audi driver here absolutely screaming on with that Audi, and indeed it'll be a sad day when we finally hear of the wonderful V10 engine from Germany, retired from motorsport forever. The day's probably only a couple of years away now, given that Audi only support the customer teams. They no longer field a manufacturer team. All their resource and expenditure now going into Formula 1. And whether you like that decision or not, one thing I think we can all agree on is the fact, when we lose that V10 from the grid, it is going to be a sad day. And indeed, we will be missing that car as much as some of the other GT3s were lost over the years. But as Wheeler carries on, meanwhile further back, Jordan Maymar ahead of Harry Tuominen. So we have had a change of club leader as a result of everything that played out at the start of the race. And Jim Fox has found his way all the way up into the lead, with Jordan Maymar place up and Harry Tuominen losing 2 places. But here we go, jumping aboard with the Hexagon slow driver, not looking slow whatsoever as he powers his way downwards. As he does so here, make his way in towards turn number 3. Well, the game plan for the 283 driver at this point in time will be just to stay behind and look for an opportunity to get a little bit more involved. But we leave us on board for a moment, because looking back behind, there is Tobias Håkansson, who is being passed by none other than what will be Jack Barker. And Barker making a quick move there, and, well, moving up a place for the Made Racing team. And we're looking quicker and quicker as Barker. But to be fair, given the fact he started from the back of the field, this is more of, I think, a test rather than last the first change. But it's a test how confident he is in his overtaking ability. We know Barker is very good typically with overtaking ability, as we do see Jordan Maymar going defensive versus Tuominen, who looks for a move around the outside. But Tuominen in the end hasn't got the grip levels available to him to try and make that move count, and therefore he does back off. But definitely showing to Jordan Maymar, look, I'm not just here to make up the furniture. Goes inside! And in the end, that was a fake-out move there from Tuominen. That was one of those ones whereby you as the driver attacking, you take full responsibility for breaking as late as humanly possible. And the Hexagon slow driver went all in for that, and where it could have been tears, it was not, and he absolutely timed that to perfection in terms of pulling his nose out before he would have made contact there. But if he had made contact immediately from a stewarding perspective, it would 99% of the time be on the attacking driver, just because he's tried to lunge into a space that's closing. But the idea is you're trying to essentially intimidate your rival into making an error. Meanwhile, Matthew Hunter won't be intimidated by Hendrik Zielke, who's trying to pick his way back through the field. And we're 5 minutes of the race already complete just like that. Meanwhile, looking further back, there's DG, the GTRR driver, make his way around, chasing after Ben Knowles, having a good little ding-dong scrap at the back of the field, and well, enjoying themselves out there. And of course, remember, for our club drivers, it's a good mixture of drivers, and that's why it's called the club class, in the fact that you will get some drivers who've had years of experience, but their pace is not quite improving, but they're here to have fun, they're part of the club. As meanwhile, Hendrik Zielke, the Inter driver there, looks up the inside of another club driver of Matthew Hunter, and well, we can see here right now, Matthew Hunter is not going to give in as easily. Now Jordan Maymar carrying on. Oh, what's gone wrong there? That is Tobias Håkansson, and the Hexagon slow driver from Sweden right now having things go around there at turn number 2. We'll get a replay of that when we can, but it's gone a bit wrong there for him. Not the way he's wanted it to go. But we'll come back onto the class names very shortly and what they mean significance-wise. But meanwhile, as we come back to the front of the field, it's all happening once again. It normally comes in waves with regards to battling here at Motegi, and we're seeing that right now. As meanwhile, Eric Gebhard is trying to hold on. We look back for the rear of his car here as he rolls his way through the corner, and as he does so, a bit of a cheeky peek there from Sight Anstey. Is it going to work? No, not quite. Still looking for that move. Brilliant fighting between them as he rolls down in towards the next braking zone. But Sight Anstey here also fighting. He's got some firm company in the form of Casper Brotner behind. So Anstey needs to be a little bit decisive here in order to be able to make this move work out. If he can do so, he'll be happy, but if it doesn't work out, well, suddenly he could find himself under a bit more pressure. But of course, we do have 3 different cars giving chase to one another. We have a Porsche up front, which is all about quarter speed and quarter exits. Meanwhile, we do have what is the Mercedes, which is a bit of a jack of all trades, with a V8, and has been recently hit with a quite significant adjustment with its balance points. And many have said that right now the car is in the graveyard, but Sight Anstey's proven that perhaps the Mercedes is not in the graveyard, unlike what some would tell you. And we also do have the Ford Mustang behind the car that was heavily hit with regards to wet weather conditions in the most recent balance performance update, and he's no longer the wet weather machine that it once was. He makes his way down the straight as he heads onwards. I see Mark Kent saying that the 7th gen car can be kept by Ford. He prefers what would be a 67 fastback, and indeed there's a whole generation of Mustang out there which many do love. But meanwhile, it's going to be wrong. Oh, that's into the barrier there for Hexagon Slows to Aminen, and the flying pin, unfortunately, coming down to earth with a crashing moment there into the barrier, and well, not quite sure what's happened there, but he falls to the back of the field. But we'll bring you up to speed on that, and indeed for both of the Hexagon Slow drivers, well, normally they do say that teammates' fates are entwined, or is it married couples? I'm not quite sure, but either way, if it applies to teammates, one thing right now, well, we saw Hakanson have a difficult start to that lap, and there's a nightmare end to it for Tuominen. We don't normally see that happen to teammates, and well, I can tell you one thing, that goes to show you how close they know each other, given the fact they've both had incidents on the same lap, completely separate incidents as well. But as Eric Gebhardt continues to feel the pressure of Sight Anstey, Anstey right now just enjoying the moment, enjoying the battle as we ride on board the Team UKSimRacing Stuart driver, and the Welshman right now constantly poking and prodding. Now, for the purposes of what will be the actual championship, if you're sat there right now thinking, okay, so from Science's perspective, does he need to pass pro drivers as an inter driver? The answer is no, not on paper. The whole aim of the game of the championship, of course, is to be the #1 driver of your class, and that's why, as he looks around the outside, this is a great spectacle from Sight Anstey, but it wouldn't if points were being paid today, earn him any extra points. He could win the race overall. It would be the same as just winning the race in his class, and our drivers will be reminded that, of course, but then there comes the tactics, of course, because if you are the leading driver in your class and you've got your rivals close behind you, you may want to make some overtakes and drives for other classes in front of you to buy yourself some space and give yourself a bit of a defensive wall which other drivers have got to make the way through. As you see Anstey, they're taking a very tight line into turn 12, very different body language compared to Gebhardt's car. You can see what Eric Gebhardt is doing, how he's opening up turn 13 more to give himself a quicker transition line between the two apexes, but I think he's going a bit wider than Anstey is, and Anstey's got a car that's much more pointed through that set of corners. But Gebhardt right now really going defensive as we look back for the rear of the 163 Porsche once again. And as he makes out the corner, another way you can tell classes, by the way, in the main season, when we've got all the door numbers adjusted, is all your pros will have numbers between 100 and 199, into between 200 and 299, and your clubs 300 to 399. Although some drives don't follow that pattern here today, because we are still finalising those classes. So every class you see at the moment is provisional until we go into round number 1 in a week's time. But with 10 minutes of this race complete, we look to Jack Barker, who's on the back of Matthew Hunter, and James Connolly there with him as they make the way in towards turn 3 and 4. You see James Connolly there in a bit of a different livery today for Team UKSimRacing. He'll break it away for his more traditional liveries that we have seen for UKSimRacing, also where it's typically his 46 livery in tribute to Valentino Rossi. But right now, Jack Barker takes a peek up the inside of Matthew Hunter. It's Aston Martin on Aston Martin, with your Insta trying to poke his way past the club driver, and Hunter's not giving him an inch. But without further ado, we're going to take a bit of a short mile walk back in time, because we're taking a look at some of the big moments from the start of the race, including what exactly happened at the beginning when we did go green flag racing, ladies and gentlemen. And so this was how it all began as the field wove its way towards the timeline, and it was Harvey Wheeler who took us green. The blimp camera view, of course, a bit distant at the moment. They'll look like ants, but the reason we're staying here is because you'll get to see how they all make their way in towards the opening few bends. And as we did see Hayden Young there and Carl Roy begin their battle, we also got to see Kovac and Gebhardt side by side. But it was Kovac who came on through, and then the rest of the field made the way on around. And we got to see what some brilliant fights between the drivers, although a bit of a slow run there from one car. And I do believe that was a bit of a poor run from Tobias Hakanson and also Ben Knowles. But then they all came down into turn 3, and this is where things went a bit wrong, and there was a bit of a jib and a jab, and Hendrik Zilke being turned very much sideways there as a result of contact with Sight Anstey, we believe. But you take a look down to some of the closer cameras at the start, and this was Joshua Pratt having to take a bit of evasive action as Hendrik Zilka was in that contact there with Sight Anti, looked up the inside for the lead of the interclass, and Joshua Pratt meanwhile went very wide, that as did several drivers to take evasive action, and well, that also saw DG lose out a little bit of time as well. Jack Barker was trying to go round the outside, and Harry Tuamina fell to the back of the group. But as we then wound forward a little bit later on, we had this for Ben Knowles on lap number 2. And this was Knowles having a bit of an off-track moment, going through turns 17 to 8. Easy to do, to be fair. The rear of the car let go, and as it went round there, Hendrik Zilka, cat-like reflexes, and Tobias McCunson all's reacting well, but it all went around for Ben Knowles. Well, it almost went around, but he got it back together, in fact, and well, everyone did very well there to negotiate that situation. It went a bit wrong for Kyle Roy on lap number 3, and well, he was at the time trying to stay with Harvey Wheeler, but was dropped by him, and as he made his way into his turn 17 to 8, what exactly happened to the Ferrari driver? Way too much speed, and at that point, he turned turn 8 into a bit more of a rally cross line rather than a road racing line. Easy mistake to make, but nothing compared to what happened to Tobias Hutchinson coming through at the start of lap number 4. At the time, running in 5th place in club, but too much rear rotation there, and the car let go, but did very well to catch that before it went full in the round. Well done to him for doing so, and well, got it back together down to 8th place in the club class. And then we did have, of course, this happened to his teammate, Harry Tuamina. At the end of lap 4, he was making his way between the apex of 13 and 14, chasing after none other than Jordan Maymart for 2nd place in club. Got the power down, the rear of the car had already let go on the transition uphill and into the barrier there, and some big damage to the car, and he went to the pit lane a lap later to get the car repaired with the fast repair available. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we go back to your live racing. As we do come back, we'll still more to come, and well, all the drivers push it on here as Jack Barker right now. Well, I know he's Mr. Popular at times, but I didn't expect him to be this popular. He has found his way past Matthew Hunter. Unfortunately, we can't get you a replay of that move that was made, but what we can tell you is it's Sonny Brault, Nathan Anstis, Jordan Maymar, James Conley, Ben Knowles will into this. He's created a bit of a queue behind him, and well, right now nobody wants to be part of that queue anymore, which is impolite if you're British. And right now Jordan Maymar doing anything but being polite there, trying to keep Nathan Anstis at bay as they make the way on to lap number 8. And well, plenty of fighting between them. Anstis here, pro driver of course, has a lot of pace. He is a bit of a wet weather specialist, is Nathan Anstis, and that's why he's definitely pro in the wet. Indeed, if there was a tier above pro, if there was perfect, we'd be giving him that, because he's definitely had perfection in the wet weather in the past. But a small mistake from Jordan Maymar, goes a bit wide at turn 3, opens up the door, and in the battle of German machinery here. Right now, it's going to be Maymar on the inside, Anstis on the outside here. 2 wide they go. James Conley a little bit further behind, and Ben Knowles where they're with them. But right now, Nathan Anstis can't quite find his way past, as meanwhile James Conley sits behind his teammate for UKSimRacing Hill. And well, Conley here, poking a pro with Nathan. I think trying to say to him, can you get a little bit of a move on, please? Because I've got a very, what is, hungry Ben Knowles behind me, and he's not letting go. As Nathan Anstis there completely overcooks the entry to turn 7. That's not going to help him. That's going to hurt the front right tyre in particular, as it will pick up a bit of debris and also a bit of extra heat in the tyre. But as the long line continues to stake its way through this lap, well, Jack Barker very gradually pulling away. We're going to see some great battling between these drivers, no doubt about it. And well, all the drivers were told going into this pre-season event, ignore any classes you have been assigned, treat this as though everyone's in the same class as you, and that's why I think you're going to see a lot more fighting here today between drivers of different classes than you will in the main season. Don't rule it out, to be fair. We've definitely seen some red miss moments between drivers in the past. Now, hopefully not too far red miss, as Nathan Anstis this time looks at the inside into turn 11, and he shows you why attacking into turn 11 is not easy, because understandably you want a very tightly cambered corner and been on that inside. Essentially what happens is the circuit falls away from you quicker than the guy on the outside, and it actually means the car on the outside has the quicker line through the corner. So unless you can get a nose ahead to the apex, normally you're not going to make the move stick at turn number 11. All you do is cost yourself time and brake life, and Anstis there really going for it right now, really trying to get into the space of Jordan Maymar to try and make him give up the position. But speaking of 2 drivers of 2 different classes going toe-to-toe, there's DRX Esports Gebhard trying to hold off Sight Anthony, and Anthony right now being inventive there to look around the outside of turn number 5. And well, that Mercedes right now, I'll tell you one thing, it's normally associated with the jack of all trades leaning towards a power car with that 6.3 litre V8 naturally aspirated Mercedes engine. Right now, Sight Anthony, I don't know what he's got on the setup of that car. I reckon he's really tuned it for handling, which, to be fair, the Motegi Resort Motegi Grand Prix circuit is a high downforce circuit typically. You don't really want to take much rear wing off the car. You haven't really got any straights to abuse it, although you may want slightly less rear wing if you want more rotation in the car, and you don't want to do it through ride height adjustments. But right now, Sight Anthony really going at this, and well, if he's not careful, he may end up in the pro class. But to be fair, put him in pro, put him into it, won't matter for him. He just enjoys himself out there, and he sides with the loveliest guy as you can meet on the SimRacing service as you can in real life. He does speak his mind, to be fair. He doesn't hold his words, but at the end of the day, he's here for the fun of it, and that's what we absolutely love about him. But as he heads on down to the braking zone, and one thing I've just noticed on that livery, in fact, can we get a bit of a closer look there from Gebhard's car? I think we can, albeit there is a big wing in the way, unfortunately, so that's not going to help. But I think that's a load of tartan plaid there on the front of the car in honour of Jackie Stewart's Scottish heritage and indeed his Scottish birthplace, and I think that's actually the kilt or the tartan on the kilt that Jackie Stewart would wear at big events. And if so, I'll tell you one thing, whoever did that livery there at UKSimRacing, or for UKSimRacing Stewart, 10 out of 10 for them doing that. That is absolutely lovely. But meanwhile, simply lovely is more fighting as Jordan Maymar, Matthew Hunter come to blows almost there, coming through turn number 12, and as they make the way up the hill, with Nathan Anstice, James Connolly and Ben Knowles all together. And right now Jordan Maymar trying to keep out of bay, but here comes Hunter looking on the inside. Well, the two teammates here, the one thing you don't do in races is take your teammate out. That's rule number 2. Rule number 1 is beat your teammate. And right now Hunter on the inside there. Nathan Anstice sees the doors open, and as he makes his way on through the corner, tries to get it done, but a little bit of power oversteer there. Through turn number 2, and Nathan Anstice is forced back behind. James Connolly now looking for the move as well, but it definitely does seem to be a bit of a fanning out of the formation. There's Jordan Maymar back up the inside of Hunter, and Nathan Anstice goes on the inside, and now Matthew Hunter tries to turn in, but he rubs paint there with Team UKSimRacing Hill Machine, and we're running what is a tribute there to the championship winning Williams car for Damon Hill on the front of the machine, the coloration. But right now, forget about that for a brief moment, because Matthew Hunter, he won't be concerned about it. He's concerned about holding that position, and in the end, Nathan Anstice is forced backwards once again. Goodness me, what a brilliant battle between them, and James Connolly and Ben Knowles now getting stuck into each other, and once they make the way in towards turns 7 and 8, well, is it going to be Connolly? Is it going to be Knowles ahead? Ben Knowles is going to try and go around the outside, but does he hold it to the inside of 8? Connolly there to being very respectful, to be fair. He didn't need to give that much space, but in the end, space was given, and well, both these drivers right now definitely being very firm and fair with each other, which is lovely to see. And Ben Knowles, he's going to go for a bit of a cutback out of the hairpin. That's not going to work, but he does have a lot more traction in low speed from that Porsche 992's rear, and its rear engine rear-wheel drive, the only GT3 with that drivetrain in modern existence, and Porsche typically known for putting the engine over the rear axle, and that gives it the best possible corner performance because all the weight is literally mounted on the rear of the car, quite literally, and that means you drive the car with the throttle, not with the steering wheel, as they like to say. But as Matthew Hunter and Nathan Anstice right now, they go toe-to-toe again. Anstice this time really tries to force the door open. He just cannot find a way through. But meanwhile, we've had a big incident for Kyle Roy up the road, I'm hearing in my ear, and he's just had to tow to the pit lane. And as he does so, it's that Roy out of the race. He was running second and chasing after this man of Harvey Wheeler, but right now Harvey Wheeler is going to be very comfortably clear as Hayden Young and Daniel Kovac are still fighting over what was third. Now it's for second in pro and overall. But meanwhile, all that's going on, oh, what's happened there? That's the car round, and that, I believe, is that the car of Joshua Pratt that's had a turn for the worst. I'm 90% certain. I think it may be. If not, it's Robin Aston. Well, in fact, I think it's Robin Aston who's had the big mistake, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for the misinformation. And Joshua Pratt right now has club leader Jim Fox right behind him. But the point being that Robin Aston's had it go wrong when he was comfortably looking at pursuing third place in the Interclass. Let's wait and see what happens to him very shortly. Meanwhile, we still have Anstice trying to find his way past Matthew Hunt, and Jordan Maymar is now 1.5 seconds up the road. And we can still see James Connolly there having the patience of a saint with regards to sitting behind his teammate of Anstice, although that patience will run out eventually. Even Anstice side by side here. Does he finally power his way ahead of that Aston Martin? Oh, goodness me, there's elbows out between them once. Twice is a bit more of a touch. And when Nathan Anstice there being elbowed back behind once again, not too happy about it this time. And well, to be fair, as we like to say, well, they touch once, they touch twice, but on the third time, we might see some red mist descend. I think Anstice right now, as much as he's got patience for everybody, and Matthew Hunter, to be fair, isn't being unfair here. They're both just getting to terms with each other right now. That's the best way to put it. There's nothing untoward, but of course, they've just got to be careful because I think it's getting to a bit of a boiling point between them, as we do see in the end. Hunter, I think, did kindly let that go a little bit there into turn 10, and I think, respect to the fact he did start to get a little bit aggressive between them, but of course, he now loses buffer to James Connolly, who is a fellow club driver, and James Connolly immediately looks up the inside here in his Ferrari. He's going to go for it, and is he going to be able to do what Anstice was not able to do? The answer is no. Matthew Hunter immediately making sure to shut the door on him. Completely legal defence, that one. Given James Connolly didn't really have an overlap there under braking, and in the end trying to dive into a space that would naturally close, but James Connolly knowing, like everybody else, that sometimes you've got to try and put that pressure on. So 21 minutes this race complete, another 39 on the final lap to go, and Matthew Hunter and James Connolly now definitely on the collision course here for a fight for third place in club. But meanwhile, a bit further behind, Tobias Hackinson is being chased after by CG, and well, we see G there, bringing up the rear of the field, but to be fair, still staying within touching distance of all the drivers. Great to see the Corvette driver keeping on, and indeed learning with every lap turn. That's all part of being a club driver. You'll get quicker and quicker, as meanwhile, that's very daring on the brakes of both drivers, and James Conley came charging in, and in the end, Ben Knowles takes one, he takes two. Through goes the 5M Racing driver, Ben Knowles, and we'll like that, I think, in the end. And James Conley deciding to go for a lunge, and Matthew Hunter responding kind by coming across, seeing that we were going to see Conley come in. I think both drivers there. We'll have a bit of a chat about that one after the race, but definitely some tempers flaring up. And well, Matthew Hunter right now finding himself right in the thick of it. Meanwhile, we come back up the field to Steve Hobbs, who has a screamy Audi behind. But to be fair, as we ride on board the flat 6 of the Porsche 992, well, not quite the GTE engine, which could scream above 9,000 RPM, and indeed did so all the way out to, I think it was 9,500 RPM. But this engine comes very close, naturally aspirated 4 litres versus naturally aspirated 5.2 litre V10 in the back of that Audi, albeit in mid-engine rear-wheel drive. As they make the one through right now. Well, Steve Hobbs trying to hold on here, and Max Wheeler throwing everything at this with the 4 rings of Deutsch-born Technik, and that is advancement through technology, if the brand mantra makes sense in my head. My German's not too good, to be fair. Last time I studied German was the best part of, I want to say, around about 18 years ago. So forgive me if my Deutsch is a little bit off, but indeed we'll say Auf Wiedersehen to that, and meanwhile we'll say Guten Morgen or Guten Abend to what is this brilliant battle here. I think that's good evening as they make the one through. Come down towards turn number 3 once again. But Max Wheeler right now, he'll be just enjoying himself out there because he's in the car he absolutely loves. He's in his happy place. And indeed, the Verso Fast driver. I wouldn't be surprised, in fact, if they did put a sticker on the side of one of the windows of that car one day, simply saying, do not disturb driver. He is in his happy place. He has a V10. Because exactly that is Max Wheeler, to be fair. And well, in real life, he does drive an Audi. I think it's an Audi RS5. And he's one of those drivers who will always try to represent the manufacturer that he drives in real life, so therefore that's why he represents Audi on the simulator, and he does represent Audi in reality. But as he makes his way onwards, well, meanwhile, Eric Gebhard, well, he finds himself still ahead of Sight Anstey and Casper Brotner, and no sign of a change there. And the DRX Sport driver is opening up a bit of a gap there in 4th place. He'll be a bit more comfortable in that regard. But with that, we've had a few moments, of course, quite recently, and we need to get some replays of events that have happened. And so we are going to take a quick trip back in time, ladies and gentlemen, and take a look in particular what happened to Kyle Roy. So this was Kyle Roy making his way at the time out of, I want to say that's turn 2. And in the end, just parking up there. A problem with the car, perhaps. But for Kyle Roy, that was his race, just like that. And Hayden Young coming on through and indeed taking over that 2nd place there. And Daniel Kovac following behind. So Kyle Roy having to retire from the race due to a technical issue with the Ferrari. And reliability, not normally an issue for Kyle Roy, but definitely a reliability issue there. Perhaps a steering wheel fault or a throttle pedal fault. Sometimes it happens. We also did have this for Robin Aston on lap number 11. Later on the lap, we saw him making his way through what was turns 3 and 4. And as he got the power down, a little bit of oversteer there. The rear of the car just coming a bit light. Trying to get the power down and went sliding off. Didn't quite go for the spin, but did lose out those places there to Steve Hobbs and Max Wheeler. So dropping from 3rd to 4th in the interclass. We also then did have this moment between Matthew Hunter and what was James Conley. Look at Conley behind. There's Conley fanning to the inside. Hunter on the outside here. And Conley goes all in. Hunter goes to turn in there under braking, and the two have contact in the end. We take a look from James Conley's on-board perspective in this situation, and we'll just listen in. And well, the argument both drivers will have here, essentially James Conley would argue that Hunter turned in on him into the braking zone. He was there, he couldn't turn in. And meanwhile, Hunter would argue that Conley dived him on the inside. But both drivers there, I think they look back at it, it'll be 6 to 1 and half a dozen the other, or they'll both be sharing fault equally on that one. But of course, in the heat of the moment, they won't be thinking that, as we do come to what happened to Joshua Pratt on lap 13. And this was Pratt's race going from good to difficult, as well, he made his way through turn 3 into 4, and turn 4 claiming another victim, but a very twitchy back end on that Ferrari. And I think the gravel on the road there causing him to have to really carefully bring it back on. And with Jim Fox and Dean Collins both making the way on past there, good evasive action from all involved. And well, Joshua Pratt doing the best way to rejoin, which is rejoin as parallel as possible to the racetrack. With that, we go back to your live racing. And as we do come on back, still plenty of time in this race. So remember, we do have the question mark of strategy. Now, Nathan Anstis has been into the pit. We believe he has taken the first strategic stop of this race. There's only one stop expected. But remember, our drivers come into each and every race, whether it's an endurance race or a feature race, the 60-minute races such as here today. They come in at a grand total of 70% of the fuel tank. After that, it's up to our drivers what they do on strategy. If they think they can no-stop the race, they are more than welcome to try. If they think that 2 stops is the prime strategy, they can go for that. Alternatively, a 1-stop. And we typically do see 1-stops being the theme. And, well, the big part of it all, and one of the big question marks with the most recent pit regulation changes is what rules and regulations will we be using for the season. That is still being bottomed out by the administration at SimRacing International. I'm sure a word on that will come because it does affect all of our GT3 championships. And indeed, I think we are running the regular IMSA regulations here, which means that fuel and tyres are done simultaneously. But there's a question whether they will be done separately and whether that will invoke more strategic options, particularly for the endurance races later on in the season. Those are those 90-minute races, because when fuel and tyres are done together, we normally see fuel going to the car, that's a given, and then we normally see 1 or 2 tyres are changed, but nothing more than that, subject to how much fuel goes in. Whereas if the fuel is done first and the tyres separately, what that will mean is pit stops take a lot longer for tyre changes, much like in GTEs, as we see in our GTE championship, whereby changing the tyres in the car after taking on fuel, that can be 40 to 50 seconds worth of pit time, even if you are changing just a couple of tyres. So that's the fault. But of course, those cars run into World Endurance Championship regulations, which at the time mandated you couldn't do 2 things simultaneously. The fuel had to go in first, and then the tyres be changed, because to put fuel in the car, the car must be touching the ground. But meanwhile, as we do see Jordan Maymar here, definitely trying to make up some ground on Ben Knowles. Knowles, of course, picking up those places when it all went a little bit crazy between the men around him. Well, right now, Ben Knowles trying to hold on a little bit longer. Jordan Maymar poking and looking for a move. James Connolly there as well, and they're all back together. The gang in the club cars all fighting once again. Nathan Anstice getting himself out of the picture, and Matthew Hunter falling out of the picture as well as a result of that contact we saw with James Connolly. But right now, Ben Knowles doing a very good defensive job here as Jordan Maymar tries to attack, and James Connolly follows. We ride on board the nose here, or the dashboard we should say, at the 346 Ferrari, and well, there goes Maymar over to the right hand side. Defending is Ben Knowles. He's going to defend as tight as possible to the corner. James Connolly here gets an absolutely wonderful spectator view. Under braking he goes, as he does so, rolling his way through that right hander. Knowles defending very well here, very firm, but Jordan Maymar looks around the outside. Now he's going to try and go all the way round. Indeed he is. Brave move there from Jordan Maymar, but gets it done. That's a bit of an unconventional overtake there, but look how upsets the momentum of Knowles, and here comes James Connolly. And right now powering his way onwards here, little by little, that Ferrari will gain ground on that Porsche. Of course, these two cars very similar in initial acceleration stakes. The Ferrari does struggle in 4th gear and upwards, but on the inside he goes. And through, and meanwhile Jordan Maymar has a slide, and Maymar goes 2 wide, and suddenly it's 3 wide for Friedman, and James Connolly takes not just 1 but 2 as he makes his way down the stretch up towards turn number 3. We're now going defensive. Ben Knowles looking on the back of him there, but James Connolly with a brilliant bit of opportunism and will take both those places, and Matthew Hunter not too far behind. And look behind him, and you do see Tobias Hackinson also follow him, and well, the 377 driver looking to go on the attack when he can. Vett's gone slow, and well, may just be able to do so given the way they're fighting. Right now, his pace is a second a lap faster than those in front of him, so in theory, as long as they keep fighting, he will be there in due course. But from all their fighting, we do come back up through the field to St. Anthony, and well, he's decided to pack in the fighting with Eric Gebhard for a while, and St. tells me that Mercedes now might be entering a bit more of a conservative mode. And Anthony right now really saying for the UKSimRacing Stuart team, you know what, we're leading into quite well, and at the same time I've had my fun and I've had my fighting, I don't need to do any more right now, but we'll see what happens. So we show you the class standings as he tries to make the way onwards towards the halfway point. Indeed, they'll cross the halfway threshold very shortly. Jordan Maymar still fighting with Ben Knowles, and well, trying to find a way through as Jim Fox, so look at my Conte booth window, has now come into the pit lane. So he's going from the lead of the club class, and as a result, as we've also got to a Meenan still in the pit lane, I don't think that car's going anywhere sadly, but Fox is in from the lead, and this is going to bring him out quite far behind. He decides to split the race symmetrically. Is it the right call? Not sure, but meanwhile Ben Knowles there knows how to defend as he breaks his way on the inside into turn at number 11. He decides to go for the unconventional line, and well, Jordan Maymar there I think was thinking 50-50, do I come into the pit lane or not? And well, Ben Knowles made sure he couldn't come into the pit lane there by sweeping around the outside of him. And well, I'll tell you one thing, the 331 driver, he may not have had the pace in qualifying, but driving like that, Ben Knowles here really showing if he gets in front of you, he's going to be probably the widest Porsche in the universe to pass. And well, very good driving from him, as meanwhile, Jim Fox is into the pits. He goes to leave the pit lane now. Makes his way onwards the privateer and makes his way on down pit road. But we have to leave him for a moment because there's a change. Joshua Pratt up the inside of Dean Collins. Collins there looking a little bit off the pace. Worst racing team ever, or WRTE. And, well, I think deciding to let the place go to Joshua Pratt. Perhaps just tucking in here and essentially just trying to save a little bit of fuel and also being a bit patient. But he gives up 5th place to Pratt for now in Inter. And we'll have to wait and see what the game plan is going to be. As he makes it out the corner, right on board with Collins. And, well, building up the speed here. When you go for a potential move, I think the answer is going to be no. What he will do here is fuel save. And how they fuel save is they essentially lift and coast. As, hold up a minute, we've just had Harvey Wheeler toast the pit lane from the lead of the overall in the pro race. What on earth is going on out there right now? Has Harvey Wheeler decided to essentially pack up the car? Perhaps something wrong in the car, much like we saw for Kyle Roy. But he's out of the races classified, Harvey Wheeler. So something's gone wrong there, and we're Harvey out of this one. And, well, if they were looking to get data, a bit of an abrupt end, but suddenly it is Hayden Young who now takes the lead of this race. And, well, if there is a technical issue for Harvey Wheeler, it's always possible. Indeed, races have been lost through the smallest of technical hitches in the past. But right now, the Send It racing driver of Hayden Young will find himself very shortly. He'll be asking himself, where's Harvey Wheeler and my relative? And we'll be told by the team, well, Harvey's out of the way. He's retired, Hayden. You are now leading. Keep up the good work. As meanwhile, we have a change of position there. That's Steve Hobbs getting ahead of Wesley Van Rens for literally a quarter. But is it going to be for 2 quarters now? Because Hobbs is going to the left of your picture in his Porsche, coming across the road. And right now, here comes Max Wheeler back up the inside of Wesley Van Rens. The Audi driver goes all in and says, well, if they're going to fight, I'm going to put my nose in where it perhaps doesn't belong. And the Averso fast freewheeler racing driver, lovely move there, and takes that 2nd place in Inter from Van Rens. I don't think Van Rens expected that one. And, well, gets that done. Meanwhile, we've had a change position there for 3rd place overall. That's site anti-passing Eric Gebhardt. They're all suddenly happening, these overtakes. And, well, there's the outcome of it. And we'll get a replay of that when we can. Makes way onwards right now. Site anti definitely not content to just be leading in the interclass. I think if he had his way, he'd be winning overall, but finishing on the overall podium as an Inter driver definitely will be an achievement over the course of the season, let alone in the pre-season event that we're seeing here today. And right now, looking very rapid out there indeed, as that Mercedes is just looking quicker and quicker with every lap it does. As everyone else seems to be just falling off the pace a little bit, but not Sight Anthony. As he does coming through, will we take a quick look back in time? Some of those big moments, including what exactly happened to Harvey Wheeler. But before that, of course, we come back to the Ben Knowles double pass. Now, this was in towards turn at number 1. It was Ben Knowles looking around the outside of James Connolly, first and foremost, for 3rd place in club. But then we did see Jordan Maymar going so wide to end up on the marbles and the gravel with it. And it was then Ben Knowles having to look one way, then the other. Didn't quite get the move done there. Ended up sat behind James Connolly, but Connolly was the one who made the double, in fact, there, and got it all done. So lovely work from James Connolly and Ben, and John Maymar just slipping backwards a little bit, and there's more fighting to come. But then we did have what was a trip to the pit lane for Harvey Wheeler. We do believe it was a tow to the pits, but meanwhile, what did we see with regards to Joshua Pratt and Dean Collins? Here's a replay of that battle. So it was Dean Collins coming out to turn number 5 and went wide. There's your explanation. Went a little bit too early on the throttle, understeered out of turn number 5 on exit, and in the end, well, Joshua Pratt was close enough, he could capitalise on the situation. So that's how Joshua Pratt took 5th place in Inter. And meanwhile, we do take a look back to what was that rather dicey little move made by none other than Max Wheeler up the inside of Wesley Van Rens. And this was firstly Steve Hobbs going on the attack, and we're going to ride on board the front bumper here of Max Wheeler to show you what happened. As under braking they went, and in the end, a bit of a switchback there, where Steve Hobbs got the inside of Wesley Van Rens, only to go deep into the corner. Van Rens went for the cutback, and then suddenly, Max Wheeler said, well, if you're going to fight like this, allow me to introduce myself. And that's when he got up the inside, and a lovely move there made by Max Wheeler, and getting the move done just like that. And Wesley Van Rens in the end had no response, as we also did have this move by Sight Anthony on Eric Gebhardt, only moments later. And this was going through turn 7 into 8. Gebhardt coming up through the corner. A little twitch there on the transition into the right-hander, and had to let the car go straight on, otherwise it would have gone round. And that explains the story there. And, well, those Porsches definitely struggling through the middle sector, it would seem, today for DRX Esport. But with that, it's back to your live racing. And as we do come on back, we still do have 25 minutes to go. We have Jordan Maymar in the pit lane, so therefore we do have a few drivers now opting to take the strategic stop, and that could really serve to mix things up. As DG chases after Wesley Van Rens, who's recently pitted. So Van Rens has returned. DG looks up the inside. That's going to be a bit of a daring move from that far back, but to be fair, he wants to have a bit of fun out there. Can't blame him for that, as long as he keeps it clean and fair. And right now we do have Jordan Maymar, well, slipping down the order. I thought it was in the pit lane. Not quite sure what's happened to Maymar. Something's gone a bit wrong. We hope he'll get an update on that when we can, ladies and gentlemen. But he seems to have gone a long way down the order. And while Time Town maybe out of sequence a little bit as well. That sometimes does happen. And well, Jordan Maymar definitely having something go a little bit backwards rather than forwards. But we have lost in this race, none other and then Harry Tuaminen, also Harvey Wheeler, Kyle Roy and Daniel Page were non-starter. And well, I believe we may have lost Jordan Maymar from this race as well. And if so, well, we're now down to a number of what is 20 runners. And well, still plenty of drives out there. And it's not always quantity that makes a good race, it's the quality of the driving. And we're seeing plenty of quality here. But as we look to Hayden Young, your oval and pro leader, still keeping Daniel Kovac behind him. And well, as he comes out to the corner, right now the 147 Ferrari leading the way for Send It Racing. But Kovac is never more than 2 seconds away. In fact, that gap 1.1 seconds in recent history. But I wonder what the plan will be for the 142 drive. Is he going to try and do something on strategy here? It's always a fault, as we see the front there brake glowing red hot. They will get hot, the brakes around here. There's a lot of heavy braking involved here at the Mobility Resort Motegi. Renamed, of course, in the year of, I do believe, 2022. Going away from the naming of Twin Ring Motegi, which Twin Ring was in reference to the fact 2 circuits simultaneously existing. Of course, they couldn't be raced simultaneously. If you do want a bit of trivia to impress your friends with motorsport, the reason why this circuit cannot have its Grand Prix loop and also its overrun simultaneously is because essentially the Grand Prix circuit acts as the parking and paddock for the oval. They do have a central paddock, but that is only for the Grand Prix circuit, and also the fact essentially that start-finish straight is on an adjoining line to the oval circuit, so it couldn't be safely run in parallel. Site and Meanwhile sits in pit lane and taking his pit stop there, a very quick stop, only 15.76 seconds, and makes way back on out. But he will lose the lead of Inter for a brief moment. He'll rejoin, and who will he find for company? The answer seems to be nobody, as Jack Barker, meanwhile, makes his way down the start-finish straight for Made for Racing. He's had a very solid race at the moment, carrying on his journey, and, well, definitely looking to be in a situation right now, a bit of a lonely run in 12th place, but he's had a lot of friends to play with in the club class, but right now he wants to try and find some more friends in the interclass. Getting you started from the back of the field, the Made for Racing driver, just taking it easy, and, well, this Aston Martin that we do know, of course, he has previously raced in a variety of cars, including, of course, his much-cherished Acura, which then came back to bite him. It was a happy marriage until, unfortunately, he and the car argued, and it ended up in a messy divorce. Then he went to Lamborghini Huracan, and that seemed to be a bit of a fling, and right now he seems to be much more settled here, and he has moved from mid-engine rear-wheel drive to front-engine rear-wheel drive. But when I caught up with Jack a couple of weeks ago, he was saying the reason he loves this car is because it's front-engine rear-wheel drive, but it feels as though it leans more towards mid-engine rear-wheel drive, and the front-engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain, of course, you can't magically change the way that behaves. What you can do is you can mount the engine as close as possible to the drive at the front, so it technically becomes front mid-engine rear-wheel drive, where the engine is actually behind the front axle entirely, and therefore it actually moves the weight to a centralized distribution, something the Aston Martin has. The only other car that does have that is the world of front-engine rear-wheel drive cars is the Mercedes AMG, and soon, of course, in 2027, we will see the same done for, I do believe, the Toyota GT3, the replacement for Lexus RCF GT3, the outgoing old lady of the racing grid, not available on iRacing. But Toyota, of course, basing their next iteration, Toyota and Lexus being the same company when you look at them down to the grassroots level, well, they are replacing the Lexus machinery with essentially what is a car based off the Mercedes AMG. They ran a Mercedes AMG as part of Gazoo Racing back in 2021 as part of, I want to say, GT World Challenge Asia, and in doing so, used that Mercedes AMG Evo as a test bed for what they would do for their design for the Toyota GT3. So it's going to be interesting when it does arrive in the real world next year, and we hope to see it on iRacing at some point. I'm sure it will arrive, given the popularity of GT3 machinery. But meanwhile, we come back to Max Wheeler as he makes his way onwards, and Wheeler leading in the interclass at He's taking the lead as a result of pit stops for drivers, and therefore it has completely thrown to the wind the position of several cars out there. As he makes his way around right now, St. Anthony, of course, he will retake the lead once he does come through and everyone else has completed their pit stops. So right now for Max Wheeler, he knows the podium's on the cards. Let's wait and see which podium spot it's going to be as he follows Steve Hobbs. Robin Aston a bit further back, 7.5 seconds back at the moment, but the 5M racing driver looking absolutely in tune with the car, and Joshua Pratt a further 6 seconds back. Dean Collins, he has been dropped by Pratt over the last few laps, the worst racing team ever driver, not quite able to stay with Pratt. You can see they're going through the bottom of the picture, the privateer, and well, Joshua Pratt, very talented driver to be fair. I've had the pleasure of seeing him race in several series over the last few years, and he's always one of those names who's up there towards the front of whatever class he races in. Now, he's not on the pace at the start of the season. By the end of it, you can be certain he'll be trying to set the pace. But meanwhile, setting the pace of pit stops to the front of the field, Daniel Kovac with the iRacing Esport as he comes on down pit lane, and as he does so there, well, he decides to park up and points the car to the pit exit. He wants to get out of there. He doesn't want to be stuck stationary for too long. So Heighten Young is on an overcut as a result, because Kovac has gone to what is the undercut strategy. He's come in at least a lap earlier, and well, how much will it benefit him? That we'll have to wait and see. A 15.15 second stop for the Porsche as he leaves the pit lane out my Conte booth window. And well, an impressive stop there for DRX. But is it going to be enough to get him ahead? Where does it actually put him on the road? Well, they've timed that not too well, the team. That's actually brought him out right between Hendrik Zilka and Dean Collins. Now, the saving grace here is that Hendrik Zilka will need to pit and Collins will. And Kovac will be hoping that essentially Collins will come in at the end of this lap. Alternatively, should he get close enough, we will see Collins just step aside. And it's not expected, to be fair. There's no rule that says that a driver who has yet to take a pit stop ahead of a driver who has pitted has to step aside. That would be blasphemous, that rule, if it did exist. I'll tell you one thing, right now, you'd imagine that Collins may do so just to make sure he doesn't lose any time in battling with Kovac. But we'll have to see what's going to be the plan. As meanwhile, into the pit lane comes DG as he casually makes way in, and well, taking his time in there. And well, this pit lane entry, not easy to do, to be fair. Can catch out even some of the most experienced drivers as he makes his way on down pit road. And we do have Tobias Hakansen leaving the pit lane already, the Hexagon slow driver. Makes his way on down, and we're 18 minutes still to go, and looking for some rivals out there to beat on strategy. As he makes his way out of the pit lane, we've got Matthew Hunter in as well. The car has, I do believe, been serviced, and he makes his way through the SimCast racing team. And well, in fact, making his way through the pit lane there, has Hunter picked up a drive-through penalty? What is for speeding, alternative for instant points? We'll get a feed on that shortly, as meanwhile more drives into pit lane. Your leader, Heighten Young, is in. Eric Gebhardt is also in. And Steve Hobbs, meanwhile, goes another lap. So Hobbs is going to lead at least one lap of this race as he comes across the timeline there. And Hobbs decides to go 24 laps on the starting fuel tank. He's been saving a lot of fuel. But where is Daniel Kovac as he comes across the timeline? There he is. Where's Heighten Young? He's already beyond the pit limiter line. So Heighten Young right now will retake the effective lead of this race. Joshua Pratt and Dean Collins are between him and Kovac. And well, Pratt and Collins have yet to pit. So the Hungarian driver here won't be too happy about the fact this pit stop has not worked out. It's lost him time versus Young first. He's lost actually end-to-end 1.3 seconds in the pit lane, given it was a 1.4 second faster pit stop for Heighten Young. Of course, the end-to-end time being the best indicator of how much time is made and won. It's not just about the stationary time. All these drivers do have to essentially restart the car and go out of the pits. They need to nail it coming into the pits, get on that limiter line, and get off the limiter as quickly as possible once they clear the exit limiter line. But Kovac now on the inside there of Dean Collins, who looks to cut back, but it is a very firm pass there from Kovac, saying to Dean Collins, I know what you're trying to do, I know you're here for a bit of fun, but the fun stops there. I've got a race to win. As he makes fun with Collins as well. We'll now try to follow the 1-3-2 Porsche and use him as a bit of a pace car there until he does come in and perhaps just gain a bit more lap time. So Anthony, well, he's come up behind Eric Gebhardt, who has jumped him in the pit stop, only just to be fair by a slender margin. So these two back at it once again. We jump on board with Team UKSimRacing Stuart driver, getting very close there under braking, closer than Rafael Marchiello would get to drive in GT World Challenge Europe, racing as part of the Akodis ASP team. Of course, having the honour of what is one of the best lap records ever set in a GT3 at Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit back in 2022, a day where Mercedes AMG looked absolutely unstoppable. Indeed, Anti right now being our own Rafael Marchiello today, in the fact he's absolutely flying out there and taking the task to anybody, regardless of whether pro, into or club driver. But as we do have Hobbs into the pit lane off camera, right now we see the Welshman here still trying to attack Gebhardt in the closing quarter. Well, he comes up the rise through turns 12 into 14. Well, looking to Hayden Young. He goes on and retakes the lead of the race after pitting. Daniel Kovac is there. The gap is 3 seconds between the two of them. And then Steve Hobbs being serviced. He has completed his service. Eric Gebhard has gone through in third. So Anthony fourth. That's Casper Rotten in fifth. And it will mean that Hobbs comes through there in none other than sixth place. As Max Wheeler makes his way onwards. And well, he comes up just behind Steve Hobbs. And where's Joshua Pratinor? Is he still being serviced? As Dean Collins, well, he had the slightly quicker stop there. In fact, a much quicker stop for Dean Collins by 3 seconds. But the problem is he comes out the pit lane. He sees a face full of flashing limiter lights there from the Ferrari he was trying to jump. And, well, he's gained 3 seconds as a result of the pit stop. Well, for the worst racing team ever, I can tell you one thing. That's one of the best strategies ever that we'll see so far this season. Although we have got 10 rounds to come, to be fair. So it's early doors to say it's the best strategic gamble. But Dean Collins definitely there making it work. And a lot of fuel savings gone into that. And we'll gain in 3 seconds in the pits. That's normally the maximum you are going to gain in a 60-minute race. And Collins absolutely min-maxing his pit stop. Although, as he now makes his way around, not quite on the pace there versus Joshua Pratt coming through the opening 4 corners. All these cars, when they do leave the pit lane, they have to go through a thermal reheating cycle of the tyres. Now, it's always interesting because if they just take fuel and they run on the tyres they started the race on, those tyres will be good enough. They normally can comfortably go the best part of around about 2 hours before you need to consider changing some of the tyres. Understandably, with fuel and tyres being done simultaneously, if you can change a tyre, you go for it. If you can change 2, all the better. And you normally change the 2 tyres on one side of the car, not on one axle of the car. The reason for that is you then balance the tyre grip levels across the car if you do it from side to side. If you do it axle to axle, if you change both front tyres and your rear tyres are old, suddenly you have a lot of front end grip when those front tyres are warmed up and you have less rear end grip and you cause a natural instability in the car, and vice versa if you go the other way around. So it's always sides of the car where you'll see pairs of tyres done in GT3s, and meanwhile if it's a single tyre it'll be the one that's most worn, which for our mid-engine rear-wheel drive machines here at Motegi, it will be that rear left tyre if memory serves me correctly. Your front engine rear-wheel drive, it's a bit of a difficult conundrum because of the fact you've got rear-wheel drive, but the front tyres do a lot more work in terms of the weight loading, so it could be the front left or even the rear left. But meanwhile, Jack Barker finds another dance partner to play with, and the Made for Racing driver this time is going to try and make his way past Jim Fox, and the club leader. And to be fair to Jim, he's been doing a fantastic job and he hasn't had too much camera time because he's been running away by himself in club. Well, they didn't start in pole position, he started second, but right now the priority for WWD is making his way on through. In fact, I think that's the WMD machine there, and well, as I adjust my eyesight, a lovely bit of logo on the side of the car. Right now, holding his ground as he rides his way on through, and well, it does say on the back of the car, go fast, don't die. That's definitely a acronym, or what is a motto to live by with regards to Jim Fox's driving at the moment, and he is definitely going fast, and so far his aspirations to win this race have not died, as Jack Barker's now got a bit more work to do to pass that Porsche 992. Barker in the Aston Martin there doesn't quite have the low speed acceleration, but what he will have is a very balanced car across all ends, and that Aston Martin definitely a cornering car in the front engine rear-wheel drive category, and also has quite a strong third gear, so that's always things to watch out for. Remembering, of course, with the setups of these cars, this is an open setup series, which drivers bring a setup of their choosing to every session of the day. They can adjust the gear ratios of these cars, although they cannot adjust them down to the minute site of the exact ratios. They have normally 3 different gear ratio settings. You have your short stack, which they'll be using for a circuit such as this. You have what is your FIA stack, or your IMSA stack, I do believe, which will be used at circuits such as, if my memory serves me correctly, there'll be circuits with longer straights, but not the longest of straights. I'm just trying to think of the best one there. You may see it get used at Fuji, for example, with that long start-finish straight. And then you do have what is your Daytona or Le Mans stack, where the ratios are maximised as much as possible for top speed, and that will normally be used at Le Mans and Daytona, 2 circuits with absolutely huge stretches of acceleration zone, which will get into your highest possible speed. So it's very rare you see what is the longest of the stacks used. Meanwhile, as we do come back to site, Anthony, well, he's got a new partner behind him in the form of a fellow V8, Casper Brotner here for old Dudes and Cars Amnesia. We haven't forgotten about him as we ride aboard, looking down over the front of the car. But as Casper Brotner continues to follow, at least at the moment, his game plan will be to try and find a way in when he can. The only problem he's going to have with the situation at the moment is the fact that we're seeing here the battle of 2 V8s, 2 cars that are very good in acceleration. And well, Casper Rottner knowing that site Anthony is not going to make it easy, and he has a little bit of the draft of Eric Gebhard as well, which will always help with his straight line speed. As they roll their way through the corners. We have 20 drivers left. We have lost Jordan Maymar from this race as well. We should point out we did lose him. We believe it was a technical issue with the car. The engine blew on the car essentially, so his BMW sadly not making it to the end. And we'll hope that's not a sign of things to come over the course of the season. We want to see him up there battling for glory in the club class. And right now, Casper Brotner enjoying a very happy run at the moment. And well, this is definitely going to set the pace quite nicely for him going into the season itself. As he heads on down there in towards that braking zone, well, looking one way than the other, it's not going to be a move at the moment at least. But meanwhile, potential move coming for none other than Dean Collins, as he's found himself back on the rear of Joshua Pratt. And right now, definitely going on the attack here for fourth place in the interclass. Now, let's talk a little bit about the class names here. We have tried to use as neutral names as possible here at SimRacing International. And, well, understandably, because different class names can really mean different things to different individuals. Your pro class, which is your top class, really is for the fastest of the fastest out there. And they would perhaps consider themselves pros. They would be your professional drivers. That's what that class is really pushed towards, is your professional drivers there who may also compete in other series or indeed spend a lot more time on the simulator and may also be real-life racing drivers or at least massive track day enthusiasts, and there's a few out there. We then have your interclass, which you are seeing the likes of Dean Collins and Joshua Pratt in, and inter, as it would suggest, inter being the Latin word of between two spots. Well, it's all designed for drivers who essentially are not quite on the pace of the pros, but they're not the slowest drivers out there either, and they've got the time and they want to develop and move their pace forward as much as possible. And then you do have your club drivers, aimed more towards the drivers who compete in it for the club and the social aspect, perhaps, although we do have a big social community here, of course, SimRacing International. Again, we're generalising these definitions, so don't take them literally word for word. But the idea of the club drivers is normally for drivers who have either got an established level of pace, and they feel as though that's the first they're going to go, or for those drivers who are absolute rookies to racing in a league, and rookies to racing at GT3s. They'll normally go into the club class as well. So that's how we do have our three different classes, and well, that's the aim of the game. Everyone typically does want to progress, but of course sometimes drivers will plateau or decide they want to stay in a class, and well, they have the right to do so as long as they haven't won the championship. The typical rule is if you do win your class championship, you will be promoted the next season, subject to the strength of the field. And of course the SimRacing International team reserve the right to adjust classes as needed, and indeed it's not always easy getting everyone in the right class. And I can tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, working as part of the administration team for the GTE Championship in my spare moments, we do spend hours having to look back through data of each and every individual driver. And I do believe we've had a team of 6 different individuals go over all the entries for this Sunday Championship for Season 19 to get to what is our finalised class list. And again, we've still got some question marks with a couple of drivers, not because their statistics are shady, but we have had several drivers who are really on the boundary of 2 classes and wondering where exactly we should be putting them. But of course, round number 1 will definitely give us a good gauge, round number 2 as well. And we do reserve the right to adjust some of the classes in the early rounds if needed, if we do find out that some drivers actually have performed a little bit better than expected, which can happen in a league environment versus an official environment. But putting all the statistics aside right now, Steve Hobbs and Max Wheeler back together once again. They're enjoying themselves out there as they make the way up towards what we turn number 5, and onto the brakes they go. And as they do so, will Jim Fox and Jack Barker. Well, we did see Jack Barker try to make a move on Fox earlier on, the leader of club, and look who's coming up behind the pair of them, Nathan Anstis, and he's very quickly approaching there. In fact, that last lap he wasn't as quick, but over the last few laps he has been about a second lap quicker than the pair of them, so we're looking to be getting stuck in sooner rather than later. But meanwhile, we look back to Stevie G, who is chasing after Ben Knowles for 5th place in the club class. And, well, these two back together once again. They were quite a way apart. They both went for a bit different strategy, with G coming in 2 laps later than Knowles, but it's good to see them there. As our leader coming up behind them of Hayden Young. And with 6.5 minutes to go here. I think our fights are not quite done, but we are seeing that the fighting calm down a little bit, and now this is definitely a race of attrition to the finish, and who's managed their tyres the best and who's got that last gasp of pace. Stamina always a fault, particularly when the majority of the European continent, where a lot of drivers come from, is in the midst of a heat wave at the moment. And if I can imagine in the sim rigs, a few drivers will be pushing upwards of 35 to 40 degrees centigrade, and well, that is going to be very uncomfortable in this commentary booth. Well, right now It's a relatively cool, what is 25 degrees centigrade in here. But I can tell you one thing, for the Thursday GT3 Championship broadcast, we did manage to achieve 38 in the commentary booth, and well, we're not going to go into that any further. I can tell you one thing, there was more sweat than there was a person in the chair afterwards, ladies and gentlemen. But meanwhile, Hendrik Zilke going on the attack here versus Dean Collins. So Collins now finding a bit of pressure right at the end, and this was the man who started in pole position for what was the Interclass who we ride on board with. And Zilke right now going to have one last run out of position here today. Can he find his way past Collins, or is Dean Collins going to hold him off? Well, here we go, on towards lap number 30. With these two, Hayden already halfway through the lap. And we suspect we are going to see a grand total here today of what will be approximately 32, perhaps a 33rd lap, depending on time. Indeed, not too many more laps to go in this one. Zilke still chasing. And Dean Collins here right now, just keeping his head down. And I think, at the moment at least, just making sure he doesn't get closed up by Zilke. But again, Zilke in his Porsche, it's all about these low-speed hairpins. That's where the Porsche will be the stronger of the cars. We know that McLaren very quick on direction change, but it's normally in what is low to medium-speed corner complexes. So not the lowest speed hairpins, such as turn number 5, alternatively turn number 10, turns 6 and 7 and 8, which we do see the two drivers make their way through now. That is where Dean Collins will be the quicker car. That McLaren just able to roll through the corners more aggressively, and that's why Collins is so aggressive in entry there. He does understeer a little bit wide that time, but Zilke's not close enough to capitalise there. The dirty air washing over the front end of the car and taking away some of the forward downforce grip that he'll be hoping to use as he comes out of the hairpin. In towards another one he goes, and as he makes his way through turn number 10, Collins feeling that heat coming up behind him as Zilke goes a bit deeper into the corner, but that's by design. He's trying to get the better exit out the corner, uses all the road there, plus the exit curve. 3.5 tenths, they make their way down the eastern stretch. Downhill they begin to descend, and getting ready to go into that braking zone. Will Zilke look up the inside? And if he does so, it's going to be a very long lunge, and the answer is no, it's not going to work out. But meanwhile, Eric Gebhard still holding on to third overall, ahead of your Interview site Anstey, with Casper Runter falling back a little bit. But this is a fight that definitely will wait to see if there is going to be one last chapter in the tale between these two, because right now they've definitely been back and forth with each other all day. As meanwhile, where's Dean Collins? There he is. It's into the barrier for Collins. I don't think he's hit the barrier there coming up the final quarter, but it's gone very wrong. We look away for a moment. It's a blink and you'll miss it situation. But thankfully, the power of replays, we can take a look back at what exactly happened to Dean Collins. And you've got to feel for him. He was doing so well, and it's all got a bit wrong, and here's exactly what happened. So Collins was making his way through turn 13 to 14. As he did so, came out the corner, got the power down, and the rear of the car just let go. Probably a little bit too much steering lock, and will in the end, thankfully, not end up in the pit lane there, which he almost did. And that is, of course, the West Course entry into the pit lane there. Cuts off at the start, finish straight, and if he had gone in, he would have been forced to take the entire pit lane on the limiter. So he got away with that one, but he's lost 2 places, down to 7th place in the Interclass. Not the end that Collins wanted, and I do feel for him. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we go back to your live racing. And we do come on back, 2.5 minutes now, as Collins tries to see what he can do as they end this race on a bit of a better high. I think the only thing he can do at this point is get to the finish. As meanwhile, Ben Knowles still chased after Matthew Hunter, as we have seen Hayden Young make his way ahead of the trio. He has put a lap on all 3 of those club drivers, and right now he goes onto his 32nd lap. We will get 33 laps here, no white flag being waved there as far as I can see. And well, meanwhile, Steve Hobbs, he finds himself being furiously pursued by Vita Audi in the form of Max Wheeler. And Wheeler still wanting that 6th place off him overall, although it won't be worth any more places in the Interclass. So right now getting into that braking zone here, and a Wheeler still attacking. And well, you've got to love Max Wheeler's persistence here. This is absolutely on rails driving from Wheeler in a car that is not known for being on rails. There's a reason why there have been 2 evolutions of the Audi R8, and that's all been for medium to high speed stability in the car. One of its biggest weaknesses in real world racing, particularly in GT World Challenge Europe, as we do see Wheeler taking too much curve at turn number 4, and the second evolution being an uprate of the aero package of the Evo 1 for the reason of simply just giving the car the greatest possible stability for high speed bends, such as those seen at Lozano World Circuit. Simon Simoncelli, Marco Simoncelli I should say, get my name incorrect there and get it right in the end, and also for other circuits such as the twin wing Motegi, and then known as Military Resort Motegi, with the fact the sweeping bends, you want as much stability on the car as possible. But there's a reason why Team WRT used the car at first before going to BMW, and it was because of how powerful the car was, and it led the team to several successes over the course of European Series and on a global scale. But right now, Steve Hobbs still keeping it by. And the worst racing team ever driver will definitely putting together something absolutely fantastic. And I noticed the 3 flags on the back of the wing of the car there. You do have, I believe, all of the, I want to say the Nordic flags there. So that's Sweden, also Norway, and not quite Finland's there. But in fact, you've got a British flag on the back of the car. So I think that is the 3 different nationalities that represented in the team there. I thought at first that was going to be, I want to say, the Icelandic flag. In fact, I think I might be thinking of Iceland, but not quite so, as these drivers make the way through to get ready to go on to their final lap. Indeed, it's one more lap to go as Hayden Young has just come past turns 1 and 2. But meanwhile, we stay affixed here to the battle in between Hobbs and Wheeler, and also the fight between Gebhard and Anstey. It is pros and Inter drivers fighting towards the very end. And well, in that battle, and that was potentially burgeoning between Ben Knowles and Matthew Hunter, it's still a second gap. We'll keep an eye on that in the club class as well, where we can. The drivers coming through here right now. Well, is there going to be any change? The clock goes to 0. There's Hayden Young, 4 seconds ahead of Daniel Kovac, who makes his way on past Matthew Hunt. And I think he's putting a bit of a bung in what is that club battle as he cuts up the inside. And then we have Eric Gebhard not too far behind. Left side Anti right now definitely feeling the heat on that front left brake. And that brake does not look to be getting anywhere near as much stopping power as it did earlier on. I wonder if Sight Anti right now is starting to hit the limit of what the car's capable of. As we will look back to Steve Hobbs, a bit far away from Casper Brotner, who hasn't appeared on camera, but he's trying to hold on to that 6th place still. But actually, Ben Knowles and Matthew Hunter a lot closer together here, and I think that's where they've had to contend with Kovac coming past them. And Sonny Knowles here may have an opportunity this right at the end, and they will finish a lap down. But who's going to be finishing 4th place in club class here? Is it Hunter? Is it Knowles? We'll have to wait and see, as Hunter goes very deep there through the corner. Knowles gets a good run, but he mistimes it slightly. This is not going to help him on his adventure. Pounding the way down towards the braking zone there for turn number 11. Well, we'll have to wait to see what's going to come of that. As he looks up to the inside here, does Knowles. He goes all in. And on the brakes, is he going to get it done? He goes all in, but he outdoes himself and goes deep. But meanwhile, we must come back to your leader, ladies and gentlemen, because he makes his way out the final quarter for Hayden Young. Well, Harvey Wheeler retired due to a technical issue, and Hayden Young picked up the pieces to take victory in overall and in pro for Send It Racing header Daniel Kovac, who on his debut takes 2nd place at Direct Esports. He'll then be Eric Gebhard, who finishes 3rd overall and in pro, just ahead of your interclass winner, Sight Anthony. As we do see there, Matthew Hunter holding off Ben Knowles to finish for 4th in club. Casper Brotner comes on behind in 5th, ahead of Steve Hobbs, and Hobbs held off Max Wheeler, and the worst racing team ever driver, fending off the Verso Fast driver, who took 2nd place in Inter. Robin Aston then comes on through and to complete what will be the top 3 in the interclass. And as he does so, we should give a shout out to Steve G, who has finished his race in 6th in club, and he was a lap down. Joshua Pratt then comes through, fended off the charger Hendrik Silke to the end, with the pair wrapping up the top 10 and the top 5 of Inter. And then we do see Wesley Van Rens in 11th place there. Dean Collins, if it were not for that error coming out of the final quarter, he could have been inside the top 5 of the interclass, but he'll learn from that mistake, I'm certain. And then we've got a little bit of time, because coming over the hill, is that a monster? No, it's not. It's a club winner. He's no imposter. It is Jim Fox, who delivers a brilliant drive to the club win, and we're absolutely ecstatic about that. Jack Barker then comes on through, starting last, finishing 14th place for Major Racing. And then we will have Nathan Anstis, or he definitely gave it everything here today for the Team UKSimRacing Hill outfit. Being in the furthest he could go would be 15th place. And then we will see James Conley coming through in 16th there, his teammate. And then we will wait 11.5 seconds to a rather frustrated today, but understandably gave it his all, Tobias Hackinson. And the Swede there, it could have been a bit more if it were not for that mistake early on. But the Hetzel slow drive still completing the podium there in club, and a brilliant drive from him nonetheless. But as our drives all cool and calm down, of course, no points on the line here today. It was all about having a bit of fun out there, and also getting a final pre-season test ahead of round number 1. Bathurst and Hayden Young, and bringing on home an absolutely brilliant drive, no doubt about it, and he'll be absolutely pleased with that. And as he cools and calms them down, well, right now making his way to what will be that timing line, he's absolutely made it work out a dream. But as he cools the car down, all drives taking it nice and easy. And well, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we are going to take a look at those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, and here they are. And as we can see, after an absolutely fantastic, 60 minutes of race there for this pre-season event, no points on the line, but definitely some bragging rights to be earned. And we got to see Hayden Young take the win for Send It Racing by 4 seconds in the end over Daniel Kovac. The DRX eSport driver in the end, leading home a 2-3 alongside his teammate as they make their debut for this season. And that's the way they want to start off. And they'll use all that very valuable information to see what exactly they can do in the rounds ahead. Then we did see what was behind your top three. Fourth place there. And the interclass win for Cy Anthony and Team UKSimRacing Stuart driver only 3 attempts behind, putting pressure on the top three all the way through the race, but an in to win that he definitely crafted well. We then see Casper Rotner taking 5th place there for Old Dudes and Cars Amnesia. Couldn't quite find a way past Cy Anthony, but kept him honest, with Steve Hobbs there in 6th place for worst racing team ever. Fended off Max Wheeler, who was with him from the start, all the way to the end for a Verso Fast. Roman Aston took 8th place there for 5M Racing, 3rd on the Interpodium, and it was Joshua Pratt and Hendrik Zilko completed your top 10. The Old Dudes in Midlife Crisis drive being followed up by Vesli Van Rens for Revolution 3 Racing, who definitely had a bit of a revolution down the field with a spin early on. And Dean Collins for worst racing team ever. Unfortunately for him, that mistake at turn 14 cost him the opportunity to potentially take a top 5 in the interclass and be inside that top 10. But still, he kept his head down on the road and gave it his very best. And then did see 13th place there for Jim Fox. And the privateer taking the club win in absolutely outstanding fashion. 7 seconds ahead of Jack Barker. A further 10 seconds ahead of Nathan Anstis for Team UKSimRacing Hill. And it was James Connolly, your run-up there in the club class. And, well, just behind his teammate of Anstis. Tobias Hackinson taking home the 3rd place spot on the club podium. He'll be pleased with that in the 377. He'll be a smiling Swede there for Hexton Slow. He wasn't slow today. He was quite quick. And we also did see a lap-down finish from Matthew Hunter, Ben Knowles and Steve G completing a top 20. And outside the top 20 behind the GTRR driver, it was retirement sadly for Jordan Maymar, Harvey Wheeler, Carl Roy, Harry Tuominen, and also a non-start for Daniel Pays. We then come to individual class finisher positions and started, of course, with the pros. And this is where the points will be provided to the drivers based on the class finishing position when we do go racing anger in a week's time at Bathurst. And well, Hayden Young there taking the win for Send It Racing by 4 seconds over Daniel Kovac. And then we did see the 2 Hungarians completing the podium because Eric Gebhard, his teammate for DRX Esport, right behind. It was 3 seconds between them, and it was 2 seconds back to Casper Rotner for Old Dudes and Cars Amnesia, with your top 5 completed by Steve Hobbs for worst racing team ever. Then did see in 6th place Nathan Anstis for Team UKSimRacing Hill, and it was retirements for Harvey Wheeler and Carl Roy, both of them with technical issues with the car, unfortunately. But it's good to get those issues out of the way now. But of course, it's a bit of a surprise there. It's both in Ferraris. Then we do come to the interclass, and here we can see in the second tier of our classes, Cy Anthony taking an outright win for Team UKSimRacing Stuart. Didn't take pole position, to be fair. That was Hendrik Zilka, but with Zilka having that contact with Cy Anthony at the start of the race, well, Cy Anthony would go on to take the win. Although there will be a bit of a lingering question mark about that contact, because as this is a pre-season race, our drivers will be reminded of the manners, but there won't be any instant points. Alternatively, will be penalties dished out going into round number 1. They'll just be told to calm it down if so. Max Wheeler for a Verso Fast taking home 2nd place there, and in the end, well clear of Robin Aston, who was a further 17 seconds behind, and the 5M Racing driver completing the top 3 ahead of Joshua Pratt with a privateer, followed up by Hendrik Zilka for Old Dudes and Cars Midlife Crisis. Winston Renz took 6th place for Revolution 3 racing 4 seconds behind, but 9 seconds ahead of Dean Collins for worst racing team ever, number 42, and then Jack Barker completing the interfishing order for Mater Racing. Then lastly, we come to the club class, and here we can see in club, it was a brilliant drive for Jim Fox, bringing on home the club win, the privateer, ahead of James Connolly for Team UKSimRacing Hill. Tobias Hackinson ran off the top 3 there for Hexagon Slow. He definitely enjoyed himself out there today and had a lot of fun in doing so. And then we did see outside of the podium there, it was a lap down as classified to Matthew Hunter for Simcast Racing Team, who on his return to racing definitely got in the thick of the fight. And I think he had the most action of anybody today, with Ben Knowles completing the top 5 there for 5M Racing. And it was Steve G for GTRR picking up the pace as the race went on and taking the final finishing position of 6th place in class. Sadly, we did lose on the way Jordan Maymar for Simcast for Altitude 3M, and also Harry Tuominen, that's gone slow, and we also did lose a non-start, if you will, for the Portuguese of Old Dudes and Cars Amnesia's Daniel Pays. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our rundown of the results, and what a day we've had here at the Mobility Resort Motegi. And with that, we're going to be right back, and when we're back in approximately around a minute or two's time, we'll be back to wrap up today's broadcast. And well, ladies and gentlemen, we return. And as we do return, thank you very much for tuning in today. We were just performing some slight network checks in the background as part of this pre-season broadcast, making sure everything was running absolutely smoothly. Of course, we do use these pre-season broadcasts to make sure everything is set and in place. But thank you very much for tuning in. And if you've enjoyed today's broadcast and you're sat there right now wanting to know a bit more about SimRacing International and how you can get on the grid and go racing with us, or what series we do have, well, this image says it all. Firstly, if you do want to get on the grid, join the official Discord. Invite link at the bottom of the screen. Indeed, there's never been a better time to get on the grid. And when you do join the community, while the friendliest in the world, we are an international community, operate out in the United Kingdom, but we are open to wherever you come from, where it is from the United Kingdom, the European continent, from the US of A, alternatively from Asia, Oceania, you name it. We've got individuals there who race on that continent. And indeed, you can get on the grid for any one of our following series. Of course, we do have our Thursday evening Premier Championship, as the GT3 Championship entering into its 13th season. And, well, that will be beginning as of this coming Thursday with round number 1, although we do have pre-season events you can catch up on here on the SimRacing International YouTube channel. Alternatively, if you do enjoy racing GT3s but are a weekend racer, of course, you can get on the grid for the Sunday GT3 Showdown Championship, which you've been tuning to the pre-season event for today. And, of course, we don't have any spaces on the grid, but there is a reserve list you can get yourself on. And the racing will be every week in both our GT3 championships. But if you're a bit more of an old school GT driver, and perhaps you're a bit more of an enthusiast when it comes to the Grand Twin endurance cars, we do have our GT Championship that does run every Friday, every 2 weeks. And, well, Season 3 is only around the corner, due to get underway in approximately a month's time, with endurance races being at the very core of what the GT machines were all known for. But we also do have our brand new and our absolutely huge Motorsport UK Esports Approved Championship. It is, of course, the Transatlantic Trophy Season 1, dedicated to the McLaren machinery in GT3 and GT4 categories. That will run every 2 weeks on Wednesdays, and do get yourself signed up for that if you wanting to be part of a championship which is all about absolutely intense battling and indeed being all part of a team environment. And, well, if you're looking for something a bit more casual, perhaps you're looking for something whereby you can just turn up and get some practice in, we do have free races per week as part of our practice league, which does run on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Saturdays. So there's never been a better time to get on the grid here at SimRacing International, and to do so, all you got to do is join the official Discord and get up to speed. But, of course, at this moment, we'd like to say a big thank you to our series and league sponsors, who do include CarMate, Modern Technology, the GP2 Group, and lastly, we need to give a shout out to Motorsport UK's esports division for recognising us as a recommended community. We're very grateful for that recognition, and long may it continue throughout 2026 and beyond. But speaking of the great beyond, ladies and gentlemen, well, this has been our pre-season event at the Mobility Resort Motegi. And next time out, we will be racing in anger for points. And the first venue we go to, it is going to be none other than Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit, but you all know and love it, and normally refer to it as Bathurst. We make it away to Mount Wallu or Mount Panorama, and we'll get to see who will prove themselves to be the king of the mountain, and who will find themselves having to be at the bottom of that proverbial throne of GT3 racing. What we've got to see today across our three classes, we've got some highly competitive drivers out there. Indeed, Pro, absolutely alive, with the likes of Hayden Young, Daniel Kovac, and also none other than Kyle Wright and Harvey Wheeler. We also got to see in the interclass site Anti seem to set the pace, but I'm sure he'll have plenty of roles to play with, including Hendrik Zilka, and also Max Wheeler looking impressive in his Audi. And in club, well, Jim Fox definitely set the trends today, but keep in mind we did see some very impressive performances from Tobias Hackinson and also Harry Tuominen, so it's anybody's guess who's going to take the first wins of the season. And the racing will occur on Sunday, the 5th of July 2026. We invite you to come join us as if it were live on Monday, the 6th of July, as we bring you all the racing action from what will be Mount Panorama. But until then, we've been SimRacing International. You've been tuning in to the UKSimRacing Sunday Showdown GT3 Championship Season 19's pre-season event. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, and until next time, we have to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.